are going to share to Discord. Okay, share that. And welcome in, everyone. Share with everyone else. Boom, boom. Boo-doo-doo. Share, share. Share, share. Share, 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 share. Share.
Grandchild, or does it specifically have to be male? Are we being sexist now?
Welcome in, everyone. There we go.
So people are sexist.
Hey, Steele. Hi, Butch. Welcome in, guys. How are you doing today? So we have Jen Wiles on. She is joining us from North Carolina. She is running for their House of Representatives, Congressional District 75. That's good, Steele. And let me know when you're ready for the invite, Jen. But what have you been up to? Been keeping busy? Welcome in, everyone. Perfect. I will invite you to be a guest.
So 10.
Thank you. It is one that I stole from Dan. Not really? Well, that sucks. I'm sorry. Let me turn the volume up. Maybe if I can find my volume button. There we go. Okay, we have picture. And do we have audio?
I think so. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Perfect. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Okie dokie. How are you? Welcome in. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited.
So, we know you're running in North Carolina. So tell me a little bit more about that. Why did you decide to run for office?
Yeah, so I did not plan to run for office. So to hear, maybe it's important to hear what I have going on this year. So I have a mom of a 7 and a 5-year-old. I'm also getting remarried this year. So we're getting married in May. He's a 15-year Army veteran, and he also has a 13-year-old son. So we're like a busy blended family, all working and, taking care of kids and all that kind of stuff. So it was truly not in my 2026 plan to run for office. But I am very politically engaged. I've spent a lot of time working on campaigns, some national, but truly like I'm more focused on local politics. So I've helped a lot of local folks running for city council and county commissioner and general assembly and things like that. So I've always been very engaged. And no one was going to run. And it just killed me to see that this seat, every day when I would check to see if someone filed, to see that no one was planning to run for this seat. And I know that the person currently in it is not doing what's best for North Carolina. So maybe it wasn't my plan to be the person going against him, but I knew someone needed to. And I think sometimes you kind of look right and left for someone else to step up and volunteer, and no one's doing it. And that's fine. Like everyone has their reasons and things like that. But it just seemed more and more like maybe this was my time to do it. And so that is why I'm running. I also was called by Justice Anita Earls a few days before filing to ask me, hey, Jen, I've heard your name be thrown around that you might be considering running. Please do it. We're really trying to get someone to run in every legislative race. And so here I am.
I love that. No, I do. And that's just it is. I feel that because I am the person where I will let others take the chance to lead, because as much as I'm a true born leader, I don't necessarily want to be the person in charge. I'd rather somebody more qualified do the job. And if there's nobody else qualified, well, I guess hi, I'll volunteer myself since nobody else wants to do it.
Yeah.
So I get that. And we need people like that. And I've talked to quite a few people where they're running unopposed for the primary and they only have the person that they're challenging who's in the seat, who again, hasn't been a productive member of making sure that their state's constituents actually get what they need. Instead, it is all about lining their own pockets or the pockets of the corporations. And
Yeah.
that is a huge part of the problem we're going through. Hey, Meta. Hi, Mike. Welcome in.
I did a podcast with Breaking the Meta that should show up sometime, so it's kind of fun that you're here.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so no, I love that the fact that being a mom and everything that's kind of led you into that, because again, we are just everyday citizens trying to make our little corner of the world a little bit better than it was the day before, so that we all can sleep a little bit better at night. And that's the way I look at it. Where for me, I have friends all across the United States. So it's not just, oh, my state is important. It's like, no, but that state and that state. And at the end of the day, when it comes to, like, I was talking to some of the federal level people, I have heard from 7 different people who are running on the federal level for the House of Representatives. And believe it or not, all 7 of them have the same ideas for like the 3 top things. And it's like, if y'all get in place, I'm going to make sure you're talking to each other, because I want you to go into Congress having allies who, okay, we got 6 of us who agree on this thing. Let's make it start. Let's start it. Let's make it happen. So they don't have to try to fight to find allies. Once they get there, they go in already having them.
And I think that's been really true for me too. One of the things, you sound a little bit like me, like maybe you're a millennial gifted kid that burned out, and that's why you don't. Yeah, that's why you don't lead. You kind of let other people have their chance. But yeah, and so for me, like, I'm not gonna do anything half baked, like I'm either going to give it my all or I'm not going to do it. And so it was a big decision. I had to sit down with my family and everyone and say, okay, I'm going to be busier. I'm going to have to go to meetings in the evenings and things like that. But one of the things I really wanted to do personally was come prepared with policy. So I've been writing a lot of policy. I'm not just saying, let's fund our schools, but like, here's the tax plan to actually do that, and things like that. But the other thing is I have a lot of people come to me with really great ideas, but they're just not in my top priorities, right? I can't prioritize everything. That's what priorities are. But instead of saying, oh, okay, I'm not going to focus on that, I say, let me find who is focused on that, and I'll reach out to the House caucus and say, who's really concerned about transportation? What policies are they writing? And like ones that I would be happy to sign on to. Maybe I'm not going to be the one to do the research and take it forward, but I would be happy to like sign on to it and support it. And so that's been a lot of what I've been trying to do, is create those relationships even before I get there.
I love that. And that's exactly what we need to do. So it says, drink coffee, fight racism, empower women. And I love that.
It's actually from Mahogany Mommy. So if you want to get a shirt, they're on TikTok. But also I think it's real funny because when my hair is here, it looks like it says drink, fight, empower, which I feel like is
exactly what we're trying to do.
Well, I feel like it's the new slogan for the Department of War, right? So yes, it does have more on the other side.
Hi guys, welcome in Hero Rock, Hellraiser. Thank you all for coming and hanging out. Please, by all means, join in on the conversation. If you have questions, ask them. If you want to know more about her, ask it. If you want to find out, grill her and ask her exactly what her plans are and what her steps are and how she plans on using taxes and all of those fun things. Why? That's why we're having these conversations, is so that you guys get a chance to talk to the people who may actually end up representing you at some point in time. Thank you for the heart, me Hellraiser. So, and I love that. No, so talking about education, we'll start there because that is important across the board. We have seen, especially as we've gotten older, I'm a millennial, I've seen the education system is, in some ways it's better than it was, but in a lot of ways it's way worse than it was in the 90s. And that is saying something, because it wasn't great in the 90s either. Mm-hmm. Thank you for the heart, me Autumn. So what do you plan on doing with the Department of Education in order to better bolster it so that the kids actually get what they need from, the time they spend in school?
Yeah, so running for an NC State House, I won't really be able to impact the Department of Education, but there is a big part of education that's a part of my plan in North Carolina. So one is just funding. We're currently 50th in funding for education, which is just horrendous. Like North Carolina, I know we're getting a bad rap right now, but we are not a backwoods state, as many would have us believe based on our policies right now. I'm born and raised here. I grew up when we had Governor Jim Hunt, who was a huge proponent of education. And so same, like I think there's, not that the 90s education was the best in the world, but I do think it is better in some ways than what we have today. And part of that is just because of funding. I mean, I think we've tried to provide more access and inclusion in schools, and all those things are great, but they take funding, and we've cut the funding dramatically. And so per student, we are not giving education what it deserves. And you look at a lot of other countries where the population is very educated and they have great schools, and it's a significant part of their budget. I mean, we're talking a quarter to a half of their entire budget is just for education funding, because they see how important it is. And for me, it's incredibly important for two reasons. So one is I think it is one of the best ways to provide equity. So, if you have kids growing up in different zip codes, which we know your zip code is more telling than any other stat about you as far as like your like later health and job acquisition and all that kind of stuff. Well, having a good school in every zip code, which is kind of the thing that I say a lot, I want a good school in every zip code, can change some of that. It's not going to change everything. It's not all we need to do, but it's a big part on having kids to have an equitable start. So that's most important to me. But second is like, it's who is going to work our jobs one day, like this is the population that is going to be our leaders and our, managers and our entrepreneurs and all that. And they like society should want them to be educated. And so I'm confused by this recent kind of hatred towards education that we've kind of seen come up on the other side, where it's like, education is like this dirty word or something, because like, I just remember how much over the years we fought for it. I'm growing up in Winston-Salem. The Black population here greatly fought for education, and had one of the first like Black schools. And then we look at UNC, which was one of the first like public universities. And like, we fought so hard for education, and I hate to see that it's being destroyed. So that is like by far one of my priorities, because I think it makes such a big difference overall. I am following the NCAE, which is the North Carolina Association of Educators, recommendation to fund schools at $20,000 per kid. And so my tax plan is to create the revenue that would be needed to fund the schools in that amount.
Yeah, so Autumn's saying they don't want us educated, which I agree. I completely and totally agree. Trump has even said he loves uneducated people because it's easier to manipulate. And that's exactly it. If we're not educated, then we don't have as many tools to fight back. It's when we are educated, then when we know what our rights are. Perfect example is the No Kings protest back on the 28th, where over 10 million Americans turned out. And I will say this, and understand I say this with the right intention. I am proud of every last white American who went out that day, because our brothers and sisters of colors couldn't. I am proud of you, because you met and marched for those who couldn't, because they couldn't, given the fact that ICE was at every last one of those waiting for people to show up just so they could snatch them, just waiting. So thank you to everybody who did, because that is, again, that's showing that older generations. I was watching interviews with ladies in their 70s and 80s going, it's on us to fight. Y'all stay home. You stay home safe in your houses. We'll come out and we'll fight for you this time. Why? Because you fought for us 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
But that's exactly it is. There are people of the older generations who are understanding it's our turn to fight. But at the same time, we look at Gen Z and the newer generations where they're not being instructed the same way. Where I have these conversations with my kids, because it's like, did they talk to you about this? Oh, yeah, the Diary of Anne Frank. They watched a documentary about the autobiography about the Diary of Anne Frank. That's how close to just reading the book they are. They won't actually read the book. They don't talk much about the Holocaust. They don't actually dwell much on it. It's like, well, then how do they know that we're starting to repeat 20s and 1940s Germany here in the United States if they're not being exposed to it through reading about it in their curriculum? Well, that's exactly it. They don't want us to know, because when we don't know our history, we are doomed to repeat it, because then they can just pull out the old playbooks and they work just like they did back in the day. Yeah. Well, if we know our history, then they don't work. So yeah, that's exactly what it comes down to is they do. They don't want us knowing history, so they don't know where all this comes from. Exactly. Welcome in Green Ranger. The fact that we hear and see them tearing down slavery memorials because, oh, we don't want to remember about it. No, we need to remember. We
Mm-hmm.
need to remember or we are doomed to repeat it. Whether it's black slavery, white slavery, brown slavery, it does not matter. We need to keep all of those monuments in place simply because it teaches us and we learn from that history because 30 years from now, it's going to be even farther in the past and we're going to need those to keep cementing it into people's minds that this is in fact part of our history and we can't just whitewash it out. We can't just pretend it didn't happen because it happened. So, again, that goes hand in hand with the whole education, them breaking it down and then putting it under the Department of Labor, which in my view, that's very telling as to how they view the workforce going forward and how they view the
Mm-hmm.
next generation that we're educating is they're not educating higher end scholars. They are educating people who are meant to be, in the factories, on the grounds, as uneducated as possible, but able to actually, make ends meet and not realize that there's more for them out there if they actually had the ability and the capabilities of pursuing it. Instead, that'll just be for the people who have money, not the rest of us. And that's
Yep.
part of the problem. I don't know about your state, and maybe you do know. A lot of states I hear about, there's voucher programs. And unfortunately, a lot of the federal funding is not going to the public schools. It's actually going to private schools
Yep.
or religious schools.
Yep. So we have lost billions of dollars to the voucher program, and I call it the voucher scam because it truly is a scam.
It is.
So when the program was first, voted on and they decided to put money towards it, the idea was that it was giving access to these private schools for people who would not have access. And in theory, that sounds like a positive thing. You're letting kids that maybe don't have as good of a school have access to this better private school or something like that. But they took away all of the qualifications. So now anyone can apply for a voucher. And what they found, I don't know the exact stats, but I know in the past it's been 85% plus of people using vouchers were already in private schools. So it's not bringing kids to private school that didn't have access. It's giving people that can already pay for it a discount.
Yeah.
And so we're using our public dollars for, not for public use. It's for wealthy families to just have a discount on their private school. The other thing is private schools aren't held to the same accountability. They don't have to test. They don't have to allow any child in. They don't have to have EC. They don't have to have like a learning disability person. They get to choose their population. There's a lot of things, that are not equal about private schools. So it's very easy for people to say, oh, this private school is so great, but then you're comparing apples and oranges. And what do you mean they're so great? There's no test scores. So how do you know that they're great? And so I am very much not a fan of voucher programs, especially designed the way they are. I mean, I would personally not be a fan of them anyway, because I am such a public school person. I think public schools, like I said, are the great equalizer for equity and things like that. But especially in the way they are, it's just a huge scam.
And I agree because I was talking to somebody, and this is where I started finding out more about the voucher program, is in Arizona. They wouldn't release they still haven't released the 2025 spending. And Miss Yee is on record stating that while Lamborghinis and Rolexes accounted for less than 1% of the total spending. Who needs a Lamborghini or a Rolex? That's on a voucher program? Excuse
That's wild.
me.
Yeah.
But that's just it is. Okay, there should absolutely be luxury items like that. Oh, no. You don't get to use public funding to buy luxury items. If you're using the voucher program, you have to actually prove that you need those funds for whatever it is that you say you're doing. Whether, I know for some of them, it's some of the schools are able to use those funds. So if they have a mechanic program, they actually bring in broken cars and they work on them and they fix them. That's fantastic. That's great. That's awesome. That's how it should be used. That's 100% how it should be used. Not buying somebody a Lamborghini or a Rolex. Who needs that to go to school?
Yeah. But also, if we funded our public schools then they would be great schools and people wouldn't
Right.
need to go to a private school to like have a better school, right? Like anytime we're taking money away from the public school, well then you can't really be upset when it's not a great school because you've decided not to fund it.
And then we talk about if versus we look at a lot of the other socialist countries, and these are the ones where they have a lot of money put towards their public schooling, and like it or not, we were supposed to be a socialistic democracy. We are most definitely not a socialistic democracy. But a lot of those countries do actually run as a true socialistic democracy, and they put a lot into their public programs, especially public education, because it's proven that if you give everybody the same ability to go to the same schools with the same quality teachers, and the same academic accolades, then at the end of the day, you don't need those fully funded private schools where they cherry pick their students because, oh yeah, well, if we have anybody with dyslexia, our test scores are going to go down because they might be smarter, but they need more time and they need this and they need that. So we don't want kids like that. We don't want kids with the ADHD. That's the thing about public schools is they can't sit there and say, we don't want your kid because of their issue. Instead, we have people on staff who are educated enough and have the degrees to help your kids with those issues.
I
Unfortunately,
think it, oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
but what I was going to say is, unfortunately, a lot of things we see in the public school sphere is those same abilities, which my schools, they used to have therapists on staff, like actual mental therapists. They used to have, a whole bunch of special education teachers. And now they have 2 special education teachers and no therapists on staff because the funding got cut that dramatically in the last 2 years. So I know there's also a lot of schools that they can't afford to have those extra things on staff because of the fact that all of their funding has been cut and they can barely afford to hit the teachers for the students that are going to show up on their steps every day.
Yeah. I think the other thing that people don't realize is that a lot of kids that go to private schools actually end back in public schools because they don't meet the needs of the student. So the student gets there and they don't have the learning specialist, they don't have the therapist, or they don't have whatever. And so they have to come back to their public school to get it. And the way schools are funded is that they take like a census count at the beginning of the year. And so people always say, well, the money should follow the student. Well, the thing is, it doesn't follow them back. So if the student enrolls in the private school, that's who gets the money. And then if they come back to the public school has to take them. Like they don't have a choice. Like they have to take the kid because that's what they're there to do. And then the money doesn't follow back. And then that's why you get these crazy staffing ratios and so many kids in classes and things like that. So I just genuinely believe public dollars should be for public use. And if people want to go to private school, that is fine, but they should use their private dollars.
And that should be something where they work with the school, because I know people have told me, oh, well, if the public schools in your state gets too bad, just go to one of the private schools. Well, all the private schools in our state are religious organizations.
Yeah.
They're funded. There's not a single non-domination private school in the state of Indiana. I know, I have looked. They are all backed by some sort of religious organization. And I don't trust that because that means indoctrination of my children, period. So it's one of those, okay, great. That's cool. They have scholarships. They can get funds. You can get vouchers. But how does that help the rest of the kids when they actually public school should be the way to go? We shouldn't have to pay more of our tax dollars, more of our money to send kids to a private school when that money should already be available to the public schools.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you. And I know you had made a statement about the Leandro case. No, what's that? I didn't have a chance to look that up.
Yeah, so the Leandro case was actually a case from the 90s where it said, and it's been like in constant dispute. So there's been why can I not think, appeals and things like that. But essentially, there was a case taken against the state of North Carolina because they were not properly giving school funding and resources to kids with special needs, so EC kids. And it has been found in the state Supreme Court that they didn't do that, and they owed the schools a lot of money. I mean, like millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Oh, wow. And the General Assembly, after having that court case go through, just decided, okay, well, that's great. We're still not going to do it. And so people have been fighting for years now to try to get that money released. One of the things North Carolina does is it caps the number of EC kids you can have at 13%. So if your district, for whatever reason, has more than 13% of the kids EC, they don't get funded for like the extra staff. And so then people have like crazy caseloads and things like that. So this funding was supposed to help that. So like kids are actually getting the resources that they're guaranteed by like the Department of Education and law and things like that. Yeah. Recently, Phil Berger, who was the head of the Senate for the state Senate for the Republicans, lost his primary, which is crazy. He spent $4 million against a Republican who spent $55,000, and he lost by 23 votes. So if anyone says your vote doesn't count, it's not true. Your vote very much counts. But he has since losing, and he finally did, concede. His son is actually on the state Supreme Court. So the state Supreme Court reversed the Leandro decision recently and basically said, well, Phil Berger has created this new education committee. And so if you have concerns, take it to this education committee. So his son essentially like did a favor for his dad, who never wanted this thing to be funded. And so this education committee will only continue through December, because that's when Phil Berger loses a seat. And then we're all just kind of left without the funding that was promised, and like hoping that we can flip the court so we can actually appeal the decision in the future. But it has been a multi-decade long fight to fund our schools properly. And we just took a big loss because of the Supreme Court in North Carolina.
God,
that is that way because of gerrymandering. Like it is partly the mix.
Yeah,
it is
like
because of gerrymandering.
Gerrymandering and nepotism. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Because that's just it is. I'm not sorry when I say, when you enter into positions of public office like that, you cannot do things for your family members like that.
Especially not as a judge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm not sorry when I say, as a judge, you're supposed to be as nonpartisan as possible, right? Like,
and then to refer to your own father's new committee as part of your reasoning, like what?
Like that is that's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. Well, let's talk about gerrymandering now.
Yeah.
Since we just led right into that, because that's why things are the way they are. Gotta love it.
Yeah, so we actually, it's interesting because we, at one point, North Carolina had what was deemed the most fair maps of any state in North Carolina, because essentially the maps were taken to court because they were horrendously gerrymandered. At that time, the Supreme Court was not stacked in the way that it is now, and they ruled and said, yes, this is definitely gerrymandered. And the courts actually created new maps, and they were deemed the most fair by like third party folks that would review legislative maps. And they were pretty equal. Like what it did is it created a true purple state, which is what North Carolina is. It is truly a purple state. And we see that by the fact that we'll vote for a Democratic governor and then a Republican senator, all at the same, on the same ticket. And so it flips a lot back and forth, truly a purple state. Well, then we lost one of those Supreme Court seats. They took it back to court. The court said, no, it's fine. And they gerrymandered us even worse. And so when it was fair, we had 7 Congress seats that were leaned Democrat, 7 that leaned Republican. And now we have 10 that lean Republican, 4 that lean Democrat. So like, that's a huge difference in representation. But honestly, I think it's going to have really backfired for them, because in order to create districts where they get 10 seats instead of 4 in what is truly a purple state, they had to create districts that only lean Republican. They're not like guaranteed Republican. I think if they had given the Democrats just one more seat, then they probably could have won very easily 9-5 for U.S. Congress. And they also do this in the state legislature. Like my district is crazy gerrymandered. And I'll talk about what that means. But I really think that they might have gotten a little too greedy, and now we have a lot of seats in North Carolina that are potential to be flipped in a blue wave, including mine, which was never meant to be a possible blue seat, but we're seeing a lot of movement in that direction in my district. So my district is Walkertown, which is like rural white America, Kernersville, which is a more diverse, kind of growing, new small businesses, that, suburb, and then Walltown, which is where I live, in South Winston, which is actually mostly younger folks and mostly Black and Hispanic, very concentrated Black and Hispanic population. So like 3 wildly different populations, and they all get 1 representative. And that's what gerrymandering is. So you're supposed to have your representative represent a group of people that are more similar, right? Because you actually want that person to be able to represent their interests. And when your interests are all over the place, or you live in like vastly different types of communities, it's actually really hard for someone to represent you. I will say that I still think I can do it better than my opponent, because he is a retired CEO. He's 70 something years old. He's independently wealthy, which is why he can do the job, because it pays pennies to do this job. It's actually not easy for me to be doing this. Whereas I am the average age of my district, so 39, that's the average age of my district. The average person in my district is like a healthcare provider, which is what I am. They're a working family, which is what I am. And so even though there are some differences, even right in the part that I live in, because I am neither Black or Hispanic, I still represent that district a lot better than my opponent, and who typically is in office in the state general assembly. It's very underrepresented by women. It's very underrepresented by working moms, because it's hard to be able to do the job and still have another job back home to pay your bills and things like that. And so I think I bring a lot of unique representation that we have not seen in North Carolina, but especially not in this district. It's been a Republican district for over 20 some years, and it's never been represented by a woman. So even though it's very gerrymandered, I really think that I am able to find ways to appeal to people in the district. And I'm knocking on Republicans' doors, and they're wanting to vote for me. So, like, I think a lot of people are tired of the idea that their representative is a 70-something-year-old man who is retired, who takes money from Duke Energy. And I am different than that. And so they're willing to have a conversation.
I genuinely, I hear that from a lot of people who are running, that they're tired of the government that's not serving them, and they're willing to give somebody else a shot. And if you're knocking on the door and willing to say, listen, I am not him. I've walked a day in your shoes. I will never be independently wealthy. I will still have to check my bank account before I buy groceries to make sure I have enough money in there to, cover it and I don't bounce. Like, I walk right there next to you. So I understand what it's like to be there. Whereas some of these people, they don't, because I was talking to Ethan. He's running in Maryland. So one of the guys he's running against, he ran in a Senate race recently, and he lost after throwing $63 million at it. He lost. And I was sitting there going, and his opponent spent like $155,000. And I was sitting there going, there needs to be personal contribution caps, and there needs to be campaign limits, period.
Yes.
Why? Because if you cannot win on a budget, you don't know how to budget our country's budget, period. Let's be honest about this. Or our state's budget, or anything like that. And that's part of the reason why we end up having these deficits and budget overflows, where we're $350 million short for the year, and nobody can figure out why. Well, did you actually balance the budget properly when you put it together? Or were you guys just throwing, spits and, paper wads and hoping something sticks? Like, really? So yeah, I keep hearing that, where it's across every state. I mean, Mar-a-Lago, Trump's own district, flipped blue. There's die-hard, districts in Texas that have now flipped blue. I live in Indiana. Indiana used to be a hardcore red state. It's been a very purple state for a very long time. You just don't know that because they gerrymandered it. Yeah. And they were trying to gerrymander it again. Thank you, Dev. And I'm actually surprised earlier this year, where it was almost unilaterally or unanimously no. There was only 2 yeses, and they were both Republicans. Every other Republican said, no, just leave it alone. Because if you change it, we will lose our seats, period. Yep. We will lose them. And it's like, oh, you finally realized the rest of us are done with your BS. Yes, okay. Good luck keeping your seats, though. So it's one of those, like, there's a lot of people, they're ready for changes. They're ready to go either, independent, or they're ready to go blue, because they're tired of what the red side has been doing to the country, and for better or for worse, that also ties into the people who do not go out and vote. And a lot of times, I've been hearing, well, it's because my vote doesn't count. Guys, you would be surprised how many races are run by 5 votes or less.
Especially local races. Like the presidential race isn't, but the president actually doesn't affect us as much as like our county commissioner does.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
on Friday, I have a labor commissioner coming on. Cool. I've never talked to a labor commissioner before. I'm excited to find out what she does for a living, what she would do for a living. You know why? Because that's different. That's neat. That's somebody who, oh, well, labor commission, that labor means work. Oh, she's probably somehow in charge of the workforce for the state. Oh, wow, that'd be huge. Like, that's huge. We talk about, the president, but Congress is the one who affects most things. Congress is the one that passes law. The Senate is the one that affects most things. Those are the ones that pass the laws. The president just signs it into effect. Just like his executive orders. They're not laws, they're guidelines of what he would like to happen. They're not law, people, FYI, for those who don't realize that, they're not law. So it's one of those, like, they're at local level, and your state representative and your state senator are going to have a lot more impact on your day-to-day life than your president or your congressional representative. Just because they are there on the day-to-day and they are actually affecting what's happening in your specific district, which, again, where you live, which is why it's important to know who's running for you, what states they're running for. And again, not just what you're running in your state, but other states, because you never know when somebody else in another state on the federal level will actually end up affecting you in your state. Because like it or not, federal level affects state level, and then state level affects state level. So you guys got to keep that in mind. But yes, back to the gerrymandering, because again, like I know I was talking to a few others where there's a few other states where certain districts are so beyond gerrymandered. It is like, I've been talking to people, it's the most gerrymandered district in their state, and they're fighting against, an uphill battle both ways with no shoes in the snow. Because it's so red, and they're like, well, I gotta hope, because I'm knocking on everybody's door, and it sounds like everybody's ready for a change. I just have to hope they really are, and they'll go out and vote. Because there's also a lot of people saying, yeah, I'll go out and vote, but they haven't gone out and voted in 20 years.
Yeah.
So, but let's talk about healthcare, because I know you said you spent 20 years in the healthcare.
Yeah. I am a nurse practitioner by training. I have worked in administration for about the last decade, but I am actually planning to go back into practice soon. So one of the things with running a political campaign and then just being more engaged politically is it is not incredibly conducive to an 8 to 5 Monday through Friday job. And so, especially if I were to win, because I'd have to be in Raleigh some, during the week and things like that. So I'm actually planning to go back into practice. So I'm working on reinstating my license, doing some clinicals. There's some like steps you have to take when you've been out of practice for a while. But I spent a decade as an emergency room nurse, and then as an emergency room nurse practitioner, and then also did some acute surgical services as a nurse practitioner. So 10 years in clinical practice, and then the last 10 years has been more looking at, innovative care models and technology, doing a lot of the things with all the new technologies that are coming to healthcare to provide better access to care and reduce costs and create efficiency and things like that.
Nor is it conducive to mental health. Thank you for the gifts, guys. But no, I love that. As a licensed massage therapist, I actually do understand the whole, if you let your license lapse, all the extra steps you have to go into to get it back. And that's why I told myself, well, even if I don't actively practice after a certain point, I will make sure every 4 years I have all my CEUs, because you know what?
Well, I've done that. So I've kept my license up to date. You just genuinely have to practice a certain number of hours to get. I have my nursing license. It's up to date. Everything is good. But my NP license, you have to practice in the state of North Carolina. Yeah.
Gotcha. Whereas ours is, as long as you turn in all your CEUs and you pay the annual, the fees every year or every 4 years, you keep your license. Which is really nice, because that allows me at some point, because I was telling one of my friends, I'm like, it'd be really awesome if I knew 7 people who got elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, and then like once a month or like once every other month, I flew out there and I interviewed them and worked on them and made money both ways. And she's like, bet you would do that too, wouldn't you? I'm like, I have a new business plan.
Yeah. That's a great business plan.
Isn't it though? Like, I can work on you, you pay me X amount, and then we sit down and I interview you too. Hi, Michael, welcome in. But I love that. But let's talk about the budget issues, because I know I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the budget issues going on in North Carolina itself.
Yeah, so we don't have a budget, which is crazy. We're the only state in the U.S. that does not have a budget. Usually, the deadline for budgets for most states is end of June. A typical fiscal year. We did not pass a budget, and then they decided just not to be in session anymore, and so they have not been in session. They go back April 21st, which I plan to be there. And I might even be on the news. So keep a lookout. But essentially
I expect there to at some point be videos on your TikTok about you being like going out and I'm not blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You can't hold me down.
Yeah. But so a lot of people want to say, well, we do have a budget. We're just using last year's budget. Do any of y'all know what prices are right now? We do not have 2024 prices right now.
We can't use 2024's budget or even 2025's budget or 2026 because already the budget has been blown out of the water.
Right.
Thank you for blowing up Iran.
Right. But also it disallows any state employees, which includes our teachers, to have raises because they have to stay at the current salary that they were at. So no one is getting raises. There is a lot of programs that they have stopped funding because the money is running out for the programs because they didn't renew the budget. And so so one of the things that my opponent actually gets praised for a lot, and he actually gets praised for it by the Democratic Party, and I've had to do some education, is that he actually is a proponent of Medicaid expansion. And that's because he was a CEO of a hospital. So he has some understanding of Medicaid and why it's important and things like that. But what he fails to do is think about like the wraparound services that go with Medicaid. Like someone can have Medicaid, but if they have social determinants of health that don't allow them to get to an appointment, like they don't have the transportation or they don't have food, like, if they're in a food desert and things like that, it becomes your healthcare kind of becomes useless because you can't access or you can't use it. And so a lot of the wraparound services that we have in many states, North Carolina's not the only one, most states have these, which are things like a platform where you can go to just ask questions about your coverage. Like think about if you couldn't call Blue Cross and Blue Shield or Humana and ask a question. Well, they can't do that right now in North Carolina with Medicaid because that platform is not being funded. And so, like they'll say, oh, we still have Medicaid, it's fine. But, all the wraparound services are going away. Further, we are horrendous when it comes to disability waivers. So we have innovation waivers. Currently, the waiver wait list is over 21,000 people. And I met a guy recently. He's the same age as me. He's 39. He grew up really close to where I grew up. I was in Davidson County. He was in Forsyth County, very close to each other. But he grew up with cystic fibrosis. He was born with cystic fibrosis. And so had a wildly different life than I had. I have immense privilege in always having like good physical health and things like that. He has been on the innovation waiver wait list for 15 years. 15 years he's been waiting. He's qualified for it. Like he's been approved and he just hasn't gotten the funding. I crunched the numbers, and to completely wipe the wait list, meaning give everybody the money that they deserve, because if you qualify for it, you deserve the money, is $1.5 billion. That is actually a drop in the bucket for a state budget. That is nothing.
No, seriously, that's 1.5. You said million, right? Not billion.
It's billion, but it's still like a 1% like corporate tax, which like North Carolina has been decreasing their corporate taxes.
That's why I was okay, million, but even still 1 billion, because I was like 1 million. Why the?
No, billion. But still, North Carolina's budget is 32 billion, and that's low. Like it's been dropping every year because they've decreased corporate taxes, and so we have less revenue. 1 year of raising corporate taxes, we could give everyone in North Carolina on the innovations waiver wait list the disability services they deserve. And it's things like that like I didn't know before running for office because I don't have a disability. No one in my family has a disability. I've never been on an innovation waiver wait list, but I've met people since running for office that I would not normally meet. And it's like, I am so angry. Like I am so angry that these problems are so simple and we choose not to solve them. I mean, it's a choice. It is really truly a choice. And I see Chris with the Veterans Hospital. My fiance is a veteran, so he goes to the Veterans Hospital in Kernersville. I am intimately aware of like the funding troubles and issues there. I think they provide great care. The problem is getting the care because there aren't enough providers and appointments and things like that. And so Chris, I hear you and would be happy for you to reach out anytime and talk to me about your experiences.
See, and that's one of my things. And I've talked to quite a few people where we've talked, especially healthcare for all, because of like rural healthcare and how rural healthcare centers, it's harder for them to stay open. More of them are shutting down because of the funding and the lack of funding, because a lot of them are supposed to be public funded and they're not being funded because, their state's not getting the money from the federal government to fund the hospitals.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have them closing down left and right. They want to take telehealth away from people, which in my opinion, that's stupid. If nothing else, let them at least be able to call to have some of their basic appointments taken care of, because then that way they can have a conversation with the doctor to see if they even need to go in to see the doctor, rather than sitting there for 6 months even waiting to go in to see the doctor to find out it could have been a 5-minute conversation over the phone. Really? So, I mean, my little brother, again, I'll bring this up because this goes hand in hand with, I believe, the funding with the VA too. It's not just healthcare for all. It's also making sure the VA is funded. It's making sure vets are taken care of. It's making sure mental health care and therapy is available to everybody, especially veterans, especially children, and especially men. Okay? Those veterans, children, men. The 3 categories that probably need it the most, because women are so used to being able to and willing to put ourselves through therapy that we, after a certain point in time, become more well-adjusted. But then we hit our 40s and we see men still falling into the same patterns that they've been falling into for the last 20, 30 years. And it's like, okay, guys, you genuinely need to get therapy. And I really wish everybody would have started therapy in their teenage years, because I promise you all the shit that you go through now would not be a problem. We would all be in a better place, because that's something I have learned. I started therapy when I was 7. My mom got me into it. When the kids had the therapist at the school, I was making sure they were talking to the therapist every week, because like I told the therapist, I can help them with A, B, C, and D. I need your help with F, G, H, and I, because I don't know how to handle those. That's what you have therapy for. So that way you can help your children or help yourself learn the skills you need in order to be productive members of society, be able to be authentically you, and still be able to exist. And not having to change yourself, not having to mask all the time, So there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of it that goes with funding, on both the state and federal levels. And then, we have to talk about the budgets and everything going on. So I love that you're willing to talk about that. But let's talk about Trump's Easter tweet.
Run away.
I should just laugh, but it's like
right here.
Otherwise, I'll cry.
Trump's Easter tweet, because I'm like, okay, I have to laugh about it a little bit before I get really super, super angry about it.
Yeah.
But the fact that on Easter, he's sitting there saying, praise be Allah, and talking about how he's going to combine Power Plant Day and Bridge Day in Iran on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
As though we, the rest of the world, don't understand what he's talking about. And you're doing this on Easter, on the day your God resurrected. And instead of going to church and being thankful and being a true Christian believer, you're throwing threats at other nations. Yeah. All I gotta say is, my friend, if Jesus were here, he'd be flipping your table.
Yeah. It's so I grew up in the Bible Belt, and Winston-Salem actually is I think it has like the most churches per square foot or something like there's some kind of stat about Winston-Salem and churches that I've heard before. So a very church population, and even the very progressive people go to church here. I mean, that's just it's very prevalent. But I grew up in church. Over time beliefs have changed, and I really try to not talk about that much, because what I tell people is my job as a representative is to represent everyone. And so that means I have to represent Christians, and I have to represent Jewish people, and I have to represent atheists, and I have to represent everybody. I have to represent Black people and white people and Asian people and the young and the old and all that kind of stuff. And so if I am too married to any one belief, and that includes like the Democrat belief, like I cannot do my job correctly. And so a lot of people will ask me questions like that. And I will say, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, what matters is I want to protect your right to religion. And I want to protect their right from religion. You know, like, I want to do both. But the thing that's so crazy to me is that these people that will literally like use that as a litmus test to decide to vote for me are voting for this man. Like, you don't actually care. You know, like, if you did care, you would be the first to see that this man does not represent anything about Christ. You know, and like I said, I grew up in church. I am still like a firm believer in loving your neighbor and kindness. One of my favorite Bible verses is Micah 6:8. And what does the Lord ask of us but to act justly, love mercy, and to walk humbly? And I ascribe to that every day. And so without knowing anything about my beliefs, people can see that I am Christ-like, you know, like I ascribe to the things that he taught. And it's just insane to me that like this man has just gotten away with so much insanity, and including people that I know and grew up with and love very much, but they got brainwashed with the rest of them, and it's insane.
They drank the Kool-Aid, and I'm still waiting for my little brother to get his head out of the ground and realize that he voted for him the first time. He didn't vote for the second time, and he voted for him the third time, and he admitted after the first time he messed up. That's why he didn't vote for the second time. I still look at him going, why did you bother voting for him the third time? It was just going to be a repeat for the first time. Did you actually think it was going to be better? It's worse. It's worse.
Yeah.
Oh, but this is what the country needs. I love you, little brother. When you pull your head out of the sand, we'll have a conversation. Until then, I just can't, because all I'm going to do is scream in your face.
Yeah. Well, I have a rule in life that you cannot rationalize with irrational people. So like once it becomes irrational, I'm like, nope.
That's exactly why, like,
that's my
I love
side.
you. Quite frankly, when you understand the gravity of the situation, please give me a call or give me a text. Otherwise, yes, give me a text. Let me know that you survived your surgery by all means. But I'm gonna pretty much go. Otherwise, I will do nothing but yell at you because I love you that much and I can't understand why you're being that ignorant and stupid. I understand the whole, once it gets to a certain point, you cannot rationalize with irrational people. You have to just let them figure it out for themselves. I have 2 children.
Hard, though.
It's not easy. It's so not easy. Just going, I love you. You will figure it out yourself. Bam. Okay, you figured it out yourself. Will you listen to me going forward?
Yep.
Yeah, you know, that is called growing up, and maturing is when you have to realize that you just can't pound it into their heads. They have to learn some of those lessons themselves. And unfortunately, that is one of them where I love that. I love the fact that it doesn't matter to you what somebody's religion or faith or things, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't to any of our constituents. It shouldn't to any of our, our representatives, to our constituents. It shouldn't matter what the person believes, as long as they believe to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Like, treat other people how you want to be treated. Do things because it's the right thing to do, not because you're going to get some reward. As long as you know that's the kind of person they are, congratulations. That's a Christ-like person. It doesn't matter what religion they adhere to. That is somebody you want to have in your corner, period. It shouldn't matter what religion or faith or this or this or this. It is quite literally just comes down to, are they a good person because they do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, and not because they're going to get something or some reward. Yes? Cool. Yep. They got my vote, because it's that simple. Because a lot of people out there, unfortunately, and we'll talk about the difference between representatives and politicians real quick, because that'll make a little sense. I say representatives. When I say that, I am talking about the people who represent the constituents in their district first, then their state, then the country. Mm-hmm. Politicians are there to line the pockets and the pockets of the corporations who have bought them. If politicians had to wear NASCAR jackets, it would be very telling to see who their sponsors are.
Yeah.
Just so when I talk about representatives, that's what we want. Those are the kind of people we can put our faith in, regardless of what side of the line they're on. If they're not taking donor money, if they truly just believe in doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, if they actually want to help all American citizens and not just a small handful of American citizens, those are the people that we want to represent us. Those are the people who will end up getting the votes. I will help make sure of this. But no,
Yeah,
and
and I joke all the time that, like, because people will be like, oh, she's just a politician that's trying to get wealthy. And first of all, nothing about this is helping me get wealthy. Like,
you should not
I,
get wealthy from
yeah,
politics, except maybe
you
if you
cannot,
write a tell-all book 5 years after getting out of office.
yeah,
That's the only way. Otherwise, if you're
you
in
can,
office, you should not get money. You should not get
yeah.
paid for
But you
it.
could not get wealthy on a $13,000 a year part-time job that actually acts as a full-time job. Like, it's not
No,
possible.
you can't. You
Yeah,
can't.
and that is the pay for a representative. But I also always say, if I am a politician, I'm the worst politician because I say exactly what I think. I am like, and there are times I say things and I know that I'm going to lose the vote. You know, like I know I'm at someone's door and they want to hear a certain thing and I'm going to lose their vote. But I'm not going to lie. You know, like when I get to office, if whatever, you know, I want to not have to then pretend for the next 2 years because I made all these like promises I don't believe in, or, you know, like I want to get there and get to be me. And so if I can't win being me, then I'm not going to, truthfully.
But
Yeah.
and I keep saying this is I love finding the people I've found because you are all authentic. And that is one thing I'm looking for because I'm a big believer of, you know what, we need authenticity. We need people who are just willing to be honest and blunt and not sugarcoat it. And you know what, it's going to hurt. But you know what, it's the truth. And it's what we all need to hear. That's what we need in politics is honesty because nobody is honest anymore. And that's why it's now called, you know, politics, and they're politicians rather than representatives who are there doing a job for X 2 years, part-time, and then when they're done, they're done. They walk away and they hand it off to the next person, having done their part of it. You know, that I will say this. Let's jump into term limits real quick. How do you feel about term limits?
I am very pro term limits. And so first of all, again, I cannot like express this enough. I do not have a dream of being a politician. So this is not some move like, oh, if I get in the House, then I'll do that for 2 terms. And then I'm going to go for NC Senate for 2 terms. And then I'm going to go for governor. And then I'm going to try to be in you know, like I have no plan for that. My dream is that the next time this race comes about, so many people want to run that I don't have to, you know, like truthfully, like that is my dream. And I want to help build the bench. I want to help educate the district. I want to help build and organize the district and mobilize people to vote. And I hope I win, and I hope I get to go and like do some positive things for our schools and things like that. And I will potentially do 2 terms, but I'm not trying to do this as a career. I have a career. I'm a nurse practitioner. I love my job. I love seeing patients. I will probably continue to be engaged in politics, but I hope it's to help the next, you know, mom of 2 kids that is like, how the hell can I run a campaign on top of everything else I have going? Like, help that person do it is really what I want to do.
You know, pay it forward, pass it on.
Yeah.
Help the next group of people coming up to succeed in areas where they would not have normally succeeded without additional help. I mean, no, absolutely. And sometimes we all need that little bit of help, and to have somebody who's done it before go, hey, if you want a little bit of help, here's my card, there's my number, just give me a call. I've done it before. I can help you. Like, if nothing else, I can be a sounding board and help you vent out the frustrations because I've done that. I've done this. I've literally been in your shoes.
Yeah.
And that's something that everybody else is looking for is we want representatives that they've walked in our shoes, that we can look at them and ask them, have you ever gotten food stamps? Have you ever been on welfare? Have you ever received Medicaid? Have you ever known a day where you didn't eat because you had to make sure your kids were fed? As a child, did you ever have a day where your mom went without eating so you can make sure you were fed? Like things like that is, have you ever walked a day in 80% of America's shoes? Because guess what? 80% of America, if not more, has stories like that.
Yep.
Can you empathize? Do you have similar stories, or is it one of those? I was born into money. I went to a good school, and nope. And I can throw money at, throw millions of dollars at it. Nope. It's like it's really, really, really hard these days to vote for people like that. And yes, I still know there's going to be people out there that get the votes because they have money, and that's the one I know about because well, the grassroots person isn't quite getting the same amount of attention as they would otherwise get because their marketing, funds are smaller. There's a lot of that going on. So again, that's why I'm hoping with this. Hi, I'm free advertisement. Come have some conversations with me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hear you. And I one thing I always tell people is like I recognize that this is easier for me than it is for a lot of other people because while I am a working mom, I am also like middle class. We own a home. My kids are in good school. So there's a lot of things going well for my family. So I have the ability to make this type of sacrifice to be able to go and serve in the legislature, but also maintain a job. And even though I'll make less, I will still be able to budget and get by. And so like there's a lot of privilege I have, but there's a lot I did not have growing up. We were very poor. I was a free lunch kid. I was raised by a single mom. We lived in a trailer in rural North Carolina. My dad was a vet who did not get proper care after service and had a lot of mental health issues and a lot of physical health issues and just was not very supportive of the family. And I witnessed violence and, there's like, I could go on and on and on. Like there's a lot of things I experienced. And I truly think like for me, well, one, I grew up in like a super generous family. And I think you'll find that the people that don't have a lot are often the most generous people. Like they're willing to help because they know what it's like to not have. Mm-hmm. And so because I know what it's like to not have, when I got something, when I got to school, which I went to school on the GI Bill, that's how I was able to go to college. I was the first person in my family to go to college, and I did not have to pay for it. So that's a big privilege that I had. And then started working as a nurse, which was a good paying career and things like that. I couldn't even imagine not turning around and wanting to help the person behind me. Like that just is so foreign to how I was raised, which like I said, I was raised very Christian and religious, and it was all about generosity and helping people. And so it's just been, it's hard to see that that's just not how we are anymore. Like we are very individualistic. We worry about only our own. If it doesn't benefit us, then we don't care about it. And that is so antithetical to who I am and my values. And so for me, like I would rather make this sacrifice because it is hard on my family. It's hard on my family for me to be gone on Saturdays to like go to campaign events and, like, and all that kind of stuff. I'd rather do that because a kid may get access to a better school. Like that is so meaningful to me. And I tell my kids all the time, like they ask me about the campaign and they're like, do you think you're going to win? I was like, I don't know if I'm going to win. Like, I don't know. But what I know is that I tried. And what I know is that when I saw things weren't working for other people, I decided to do something about it. And that is what I care that you learn about from this. Like, I don't care if you learn that I won or whatever. I care that you learn that we stand up and we do things for other people when people need something. And so for me, I've already won because my kids are learning that lesson.
And that's a lot of it is like what I'm doing is I went back to school at 35 to be a licensed massage therapist because that was my dream. But I was in so much pain because of my fibromyalgia, my psoriatic arthritis, and my osteospinostosis, the scoliosis, like everything that was wrong with my body. Hold on, I got to do this. And so I didn't feel well enough to pursue my dream career till my mid 30s. And that was 6 years ago. I'll be 42 this summer. And so I have shown my kids, and this is the example I want to show them, that it's never too late to pursue the things you truly want with all of your heart. If you want it, go for it. Mm-hmm. I, growing up, had parents naysay about being a massage therapist, be a physical therapist instead. Being a political journalist. Oh, you'll never make money as a political journalist. You'll never make money as an author. You'll never make money doing this, never make money doing that. So for me growing up, my parents were focused on me being able to make money and, afford and all this. And it's like, but at the end of the day, I wasn't happy. I wasn't satisfied. I was miserable until I started doing the things that made me happy. And so that's the thing where I want my kids to take away, like, listen, there's a lot of things you can do in life, but the end of the day is pursue something that's going to make you happy, feel fulfilled, is going to sustain you. Because if you're not, then in 5 years, 10 years, you're going to burn out and you're not going to know what you want to do with your life. And unfortunately, we millennials we're all hitting that burnout period because we're hitting our 40s and we're like, God, we are so exhausted because we did the hard work. We went to school. We got the degrees. We did all the things. Why is it not happening like they said it would? Why are we not having our own homes? Our own homes are 3 times the amount they should be. Why is this happening?
Mhm.
It's not okay. It's not because, again, and we'll go into housing affordability here soon. Because yeah, I was looking at that. I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. But okay, you're Forsyth County near Winston-Salem. Purple state or still red state? So she was saying it is more of a purple state than just being a straight red state.
Yeah, it
Um,
is very purple, but very gerrymandered. So we will often, like statewide races like governor will go Democrat, but a lot of our legislative races go Republican because they're favored for Republicans due to gerrymandering.
yeah, so he's in California. I do love the fact that Joe, even though he's in California, he talks with the representatives in different states and asks them a good question like that. Like,
Mhm.
where exactly are you by this place? By this place? Like, what's going on? Because, yeah, let's hope Den wins, baby. Just like me, he's one of those, he wants to see change. So a lot of my people, they'll come in and, well, the way they help is they'll ask the questions.
Mhm.
Great. If that's all you can do to help affect change is come in and have a conversation with a candidate, just come in and have the conversation with a candidate. Believe it or not, you are helping to affect change by doing so. It sounds weird, but we've had some really good questions where they come in and it makes the candidate actually think for a second.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like that's a good question. Let me think about this for a second.
Hmm.
Okay, now I have an answer for you because there's things like I have one that I will end up asking that Ethan Sweetland May gave me when he asked one of my other candidates, and I'm like, oh, that's a good one. I have to ask that everybody going forward. I mean, if you can improve abortion rights, raise minimum wage, and help with housing affordability, that's very important. Yep. So I know we've touched on various parts of it, but let's actually delve into what is your platform? What are your goals? And how do you plan on achieving these goals if elected to office?
Yeah, so for North Carolina, we like I said, we have greatly decreased our corporate tax rates, and they are set to go to Z. We have the lowest corporate tax rates of any state in the U.S., and they are set to go to 0% in 2030. And so we have lost billions of dollars to corporations not having to pay taxes. Further, we have crazy um, laws for data centers. So data centers don't pay any sales tax in North Carolina. They don't pay utility, like taxes on utilities. So they're using up all of our water and utilities, and then they don't pay taxes. And so, and the whole reason is North Carolina kind of boasts about being like a state that's best for business, but it's really truly like best for corporate business. It's not necessarily like great for small businesses, which I'm much more concerned about. But they've like kind of the same way that they've created these lies with education, all this other stuff. They've created these lies with corporate taxes. They will tell you like, well, if we raise the corporate tax rates, if we raise the corporate tax rates, everybody's going to leave and no one's going to want to be in business in North Carolina. And it's not true. It's not even like close to the top of why a business says what state they're going to go to.
As a small business owner, I will be the first to say, go ahead, increase the corporate tax. I'll be okay paying 3 or 4 more%. That's
Yeah.
just gonna,
Yeah. But actually I have something for you as a small business owner. So, but anyway, like it's just not a factor. Like what businesses are looking at when they are deciding what state to go to is like, do they have airports? Do they have like universities that are going to train the people that I need to work the jobs? Like, do they have good infrastructure? Because the businesses use the infrastructure, like they use the roads and they use all those things. And so those things are wildly more important. And we have, instead of recognizing like how great of a state North Carolina is for businesses because it has all of those things, we have instead created this lie that we need to go to like 0% corporate tax rates to keep our businesses, let all these data centers come in, ruin our resources, and we need to give them all these like special favors and things like that. And what we have done is we have lost like tens of billions of dollars in revenue. And so my most important priority, and I tell everyone this, is to stop the bleed on revenue, like revenue loss from corporations, because I can't fund public schools. I can't raise the minimum wage because we have to pay state employees that minimum wage. So it costs money. I can't do any of those things until we have a tax base that allows us to do those things. So that is my priority. My priority and what I'm running on is a progressive tax system that has 0% taxes below $100,000 in income, but then a progressive tax rate after that, because I do want to give people that have been living paycheck to paycheck and haven't been able to afford anything, a break. It also has 0% corporate taxes below $500,000 because I want small businesses to not be carrying, the weight of the revenue. But then after that, a very progressive tax rate. So larger corporations, these, Duke Energy that's making $5 billion in profit actually has to pay its fair share. And so once we have that tax base, then there are things I want to fund. The $20,000 per student for schools, wipe the innovation waiver, wait list, a living wage. I think realistically we'll have to start, and I see that we need a $23 minimum wage, and I don't actually disagree with that at all. I think we will probably have to start at $15 an hour because right now we're at $7.25 in North Carolina.
There's
So
a lot of states that they need to go to a minimum of 15, and that's basically every state that has 7.25. They're at the federal minimum wage. They need to go to 15, and really, the federal minimum wage should be $15 an hour based on inflation because
and it really should be like what Joe is saying, more like 23 or even higher in some areas. But I want to get to at least 15, but then tie it to inflation. So there's automatic increases. So we never go 16 years again without an increase in minimum wages. That's crazy. And then housing affordability is a big part of my platform. I actually volunteer with the unhoused. So this is a very personal thing for me. I have a great care for the community. And then also for people that aren't unhoused, but they're renting, and how horribly we treat renters in North Carolina. And so, but a lot of the work you have to do for housing actually doesn't cost money, which is kind of great. So a lot of it is policy. So it's policy like tenants get first rights to buy a property if someone sells. Or we have more community land trusts where the community owns the land. And so then when someone is buying the housing on the land, they're paying for the house, not the land, which is what causes things to be so expensive sometimes. And then it stays in ownership of the community. So we can put more tiny houses or, duplexes or whatever. It's laws that allow more duplexes and multi-family living units. Because right now there's a lot of zoning that doesn't allow that. Because you have the NIMBYism, not in my backyard. All the rich people are like, I don't want that in my backyard, So I want to have more laws that allow for these types of units that are affordable. And so a big part of my platform is getting the revenue to pay for things. But then there's also just common sense policies that don't cost money, but make a huge difference in people being able to stay in their home. Another one is just Duke Energy is murdering everyone with rate hikes. I've heard
Duke Energy here in Indiana. So I genuinely understand. Our bill went up and we have to figure out how much and why.
Oh yeah. Yeah, mine did too. But I have people coming on my TikTok in my comments saying I can't afford my electricity bill. I'm going to have to become homeless because I can't pay my electricity bill. That should never happen. That's insane. And so
there's some states, depending on who it is, because here's the thing you have to understand about Duke. Duke is owned by BlackRock. If you're wondering.
Oh yeah.
Just so, I can even tell you which person on the board is linked to which one. Because I was there the other night and I got 18 in on this one and 24 in on this one and 17 on that one, and then I'm 33 in on that one because it's that dude. I'm okay, well, I'm done now because my head hurts. Turns out, when Ethan told me, because that was one of the things I learned during our first interview and conversation, that BlackRock had a monopoly on Indiana utilities when it came to electricity. And they also have one in Michigan and Wisconsin. And they're starting to have one in North Carolina and Virginia. And it's disgusting. And it makes me want to put my head through the wall.
Yeah, my opponent takes money from them. So if you don't like Duke Energy, well, there you go. And he also votes in favor of Duke Energy. So there was a law that went on the books in 2021. I believe it was 2021. Apologies if I got that date wrong. But essentially it was whether or not Duke Energy could raise rates to pay for their pollution. So they had coal ash spills that needed to be cleaned up, and they wanted to raise rates on us, the consumer, to pay for it. And my opponent voted in favor of that. And so now we have raised rates to pay for their pollution while they're making $5 billion in profit. And so
it's the fact that they keep having record profits each year after 2020 that's really starting to make my hair go even more gray than it already was. Because
Yeah.
no, why are you making record profits and making us pay more to cover your problems, your issues, your spills, yeah. Somebody
Yeah.
make that make sense.
And that doesn't happen for other businesses, right? Like other businesses, I mean, it does happen. Let's be true. Like, honest, we have all kinds of corporate breaks and bailout businesses all the time in this country. But a lot of times, like if your business makes a mistake, they have to pay to fix it. But for some reason, we keep running in and saving banks and saving Duke Energy and utility companies. And the thing with utility companies is it's like, at this point, it's a need. It's not, like, it's a necessity to live. It's like a human right, and so no one should be profiting off of it, period. But to profit off of it and then turn around and make us pay for it, your mistakes, is just asinine. And it's stuff like that, again, where I'm like learning all these things and I'm learning about the votes and who voted for what and why things are happening. And it's infuriating.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you, learning more and more and more about various different things and how it's in one state and then how it is in another state and how it's in another state and how they've confirmed things in one state but they're lying to representatives in another state. It's like, oh my good Lord, like it hurts my head because it is definitely the fingers don't know what the thumbs are doing and the left hand has no idea what the right hand's doing. It's all just discombobulated, and it feels like they're doing it on purpose so that nobody actually understands the full gravity of the entire big picture, because well, we can see is our small little portions of it, but the bigger picture is, oh no, guys, you got to understand, like it's bad across the board. Like they own all of it. They own all of it. We have to slowly fight and dig our way out of this because we let it happen by voting in the people that we voted in. Some of us may not have realized, because we were very, very young at the time, and now we're finally, 20 years older, what those votes and the consequences and the gravity of them, what they would actually have. Now that we know, it's like, okay, guys, thanks for the older generation for kind of putting us where we are. Now that we're old enough to understand where we are, God, thank you. Now we have to dig out. It's a hole it's a well that's 20 feet down, and we have no rope and no shovel. Yeah. So this is gonna be fun. But that's quite literally where we're at, is we are literally digging ourselves out of a well that has no ladder, no rope, no nothing. We just hope we can climb up, and we keep sliding back down because it keeps raining, and every time it rains we slide right back down. And that's the analogy I feel like it is, because yeah, we keep trying to climb back up to the top and we get almost there, and the next thing we know, all these seats get flipped. Trump's now in office, and we're right back down where we started, going, oh God damn it, I tried. Well, let's give it one more good try. I will always keep trying. I would never stop fighting. But I was gonna say, so back to the whole, I know you made a comment about, people caring about each other. And so during the shutdown, the government shutdown last November, when a lot of people were talking about, oh, the people on SNAP deserve it, I'm glad they're not getting food, blah, blah, blah. And then you have the rest of us going, yeah, nope, what can we do to donate? Like, we went through our pantry. Anything that was going to expire in the next few months, we pulled. Because if we hadn't eaten in the last 6, somebody's going to eat it in the next 3. So we give my clothes. I went through all of my clothes, all my professional clothes, again, that didn't fit me, everything I'd outgrown, something I hadn't worn in 2 or 3 years, put it all in a bag. And I did not take it to Goodwill. I don't take it to Salvation Army. I won't do any of those places. I won't do the resellers because they make a profit off of that. Instead, I turn around and I take it to the women's shelters or the women's closets, where they give clothes to women free. The women's closet is something Medicaid uses. And what they do is they help single moms who are getting out of relationships get jobs. So they help put them in professional clothing. They give them 2 outfits, and they help them, set up interviews and all those different things. So that's where I take the clothes. The women's shelters, that's where I take the clothes the kids have outgrown. Why? Because there's always kids at women's shelters that need clothing. Because a lot of times the women are taking themselves and their kids out of a bad situation, and they don't have more time than to grab 1 or 2 stuffies in a backpack. Like literally, they come with nothing. So my kids have outgrown it. It's lightly used. It's still in good condition. Let's take it. And I tell my friends, here are all the locations. If you don't know, look into your state. Find the women's shelters. Ask them if they take donations. A lot of them do. And you'd be surprised how much those places need it. Don't just give it to Goodwill, who's going to sell it for a profit for their shareholders. FYI, they pay all their employees minimum wage, and the profit is for their shareholders, and they do make a profit there. I worked for Goodwill for a while. Yeah. The insights and out of that. So I know, I love the fact that, the corporate taxes, that is definitely a way that you can fund the entire system. And that's something where we have to look at. We need to tax the billionaires. We need to tax the rich. We need to tax the corporations. We need to be able to fund our country and not just throw all the money towards a war that none of us want to be in and let our own people suffer and struggle and starve on the streets. So yeah, no, that's fantastic. So let's talk about data centers real quick. So I was writing down, I didn't finish writing it. So you said they get no taxes on what with the laws?
They don't pay sales taxes on like a lot of things, so including utilities. So one of the biggest kind of controversies with data centers is that they use up a lot of water. So in North Carolina, they don't have to pay taxes on that water. So they're using a lot, they're straining the system, they're, creating more costs for us, and then they don't even have to pay taxes to cover their use. But there are a lot of kind of pro data center policies in North Carolina. And the whole reason that they say is because it will create jobs, but it's actually data centers don't create a lot of jobs. And I don't think people necessarily know this. So in the first year they do, because like the actual building of the data center creates like construction jobs and things like that. But once the data center is complete, a lot of the work you can actually remote in. So someone could be in California, like in Silicon Valley, and remoting into a data center in North Carolina. And so it may be creating jobs, but it's not specific that it's creating jobs for your community, especially if your community doesn't have that specialized training. Like if there aren't schools and people aren't trained in that way, well, they're not getting those jobs. And so one of the things that I want to see is instead of having so many like freebies for businesses, that we actually like make the businesses give us something. If these giant corporations are coming in, well, first they should be paying taxes, but two, like maybe they should agree to employ so many local people, like if that's the whole purpose of having them is to help our economy, then it should actually be helping our economy. And so, there's a lot of things I want to do and looking at the policy that we've done that's very pro-business. And again, all this goes back to like money lining pockets. There are representatives that have stock in these companies, or they're getting something for, like letting them come in and creating these policies. There's always some kind of money involved. My opponent is taking a lot of money. I was like looking over his financial contributions for the first report that we had to do, and he's getting like a lot of out of state money. I'm like, why are all these like people from other states giving him the top amount, like the most that you can give somebody? A lot of them own casinos. Well, what is a recent thing that we have been trying to do in North Carolina? Change casino laws so we can have more casinos. So of course, casino owners are like lining their pockets because they want to be able to get in and like build their casino here. And so it's like all that, like if you chase the money, if you like watch where the money goes, you can figure out a lot about what is going on and what someone's going to prioritize. I get money all from individuals. I have no money from corporations. My average donation is like $20. Like we are a very like microfinance campaign. Not everyone is local. I've had out of state donors, but they're like $5 donations, and they're people that just genuinely care about democracy and like want to support my campaign. And they know North Carolina is an important state for that. But yes. And so like, please look up my contributions. There'll be nothing interesting to find, but you can totally look them up. They're real people. And most of the larger donations were friends or family that, believe in what I'm doing.
Okay, PJ wants to know, if you were offered money from a big corporation, how would you handle it?
So I would say no. And I mean, I do think there is like, well, first of all, they would never offer me, right? Like I'm not going to be offered.
This is one of those hypotheticals.
Yeah, it's hypothetical, but
situation. It's
yeah,
really
but there's, yeah. But I would say no. And I do have people in the Democratic Party and people that I like a lot. Like they're my friends who said, well, like Duke Energy gave me money. I'm going to take their money because, it doesn't mean I have to vote for them. And they don't. Like you can look at their record and they do not vote in Duke Energy's favor just because Duke Energy gave them $1,000, And so they're not being untrue. It is so, again, antithetical to my values and what I believe that I just like can't do it. I will say PACs are confusing because like any kind of organization that funds campaigns, like Planned Parenthood is an example. So Planned Parenthood has a PAC. And so if they wanted to like give money to your campaign because they know that you care a lot about abortion rights and you're going to be very, pro-abortion rights and access to healthcare and things like that, they might want to give you money to your campaign. I have truly not even decided what I want to do about that. Because like, there's a part of me that, like I say, no PACs, no corporations. Well, then I need to be like truthful to that. So I think like if a PAC, like a good PAC, like a teacher's PAC or like a union PAC or something like that, offer me money, I'd probably ask my like constituents what they wanted me to do, honestly, because like I would feel so torn about what to do. But absolutely not from corporations or corporate PACs. Like I will not take it.
But because there's some of them like unions. Unions are good.
Yeah.
Corporations don't like unions. Unions are good for the working class. So that'd be one of those like only people who don't understand that would say don't take the money. The rest of us would be like, no. Even if you don't necessarily vote that way, like that is definitely, those are people that it would definitely be easier to take the money from, simply because a lot of them are like, listen, we're just asking that you don't screw us over with any of the laws. Like vote for unions. That's not hard to do, because a lot of the unions, you need teachers unions, you need CWA, you need this, you need that. Otherwise, like for Dan, he works for AT&T. Without the union, without being able to have his job secured, okay, then every year they trim the fat. They get rid of managers. They get rid of this. They get rid of that. He's been with the company almost 20 years and opted not to leave his union job because of the fact that if he leaves the union job, if he stops being a service tech and becomes a manager, he's now an AT&T official employee, no longer part of the union. And if they trim the fat, he could lose his job. It's much better for him to just stay doing what he's been doing for the last 17 years. Why? Because it's stable and we have an income guaranteed in case something happens with what's going on in the world. It's not easy to find a job right now.
And Space Ranger Cindy is one of my followers, and she said no PACs opens up to bad ones. And I like don't even disagree with her. And like more than anything, I don't think they should exist for anybody. Like I don't think our election should be funded by lobbyists, even if they're a lobbyist I agree with, like they're a teacher lobby, or like I just like that's not how I think elections should be funded. I really think we should have publicly funded elections where you just get an amount of money to run and that's what you get, like, because again, that kind of, to your point, like it shows that you can manage a budget and like what you're able to do with the same amount of funds. Like what are two people able to do with the same amount of funds and things like that. So that's truly how I think it should work. And because I do have, very strong like ethics and morals, I like, there is a part that's like, okay, well, the system isn't built that way. So you have to sometimes like play in the system. I mean, that is part of the reason I'm running as a Democrat. I can't run as an independent and win an election. So I had to pick a side. But there's a lot of stuff where I don't align with the Democrats. Like I'm more progressive than they are, things like that. And so, I think there's some things you have to give on. But I think in general, like when it comes to money in politics, I have very firm beliefs and ethics, and it would be hard for me to go against them.
Or websites are looking at some people. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is we need to keep big money and we need to keep corporations and we need to keep donors and PACs and all of that out of politics. I know I was talking to somebody and they were explaining like with the Republican Party and how it's considered, and the same with the Democrat, but how the, what the RNC and the DNC are considered private companies. And so they can give money to whichever candidates they want. And somebody was explaining to me how it was one of those, it's tied into APAC and how they were giving money to their candidates who were then spending it, and they were spending it using, foreign investors, and it was then being funneled into the foreign companies who were then turning around and funneling it back into the RNC, and it was just this vicious cycle of basically money laundering. And I'm like, that's what money laundering is. That's like literally money laundering, like, and it's okay. Well, yeah, because it's done on that level. But if they were a public entity, then it would be money laundering. And I'm like, and the difference is what? Like, it's the same thing regardless, where you have all these big money giving into these bought politicians who are then spending their money on foreign investors who are then taking the money and putting it back into a foreign economy and then turning around and putting it back into the Republican hands. But at no point does it actually hit the American economy.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem too with our economy, which is the reason why it's inflation. And there's talking about, but there's not enough money. There is when you look up here instead of looking down here, but they keep looking down for the money instead of up for the money.
Yeah. I mean, one great example of that is like the sales tax. I mean, most of our revenue in North Carolina is now from sales taxes because of how low we've dropped corporate tax rates. And sales taxes are like in North Carolina are just on goods. So they're on like products like food and things like that. And so they largely affect the people with less, right? So we don't have taxes on services, but services are way more likely to be used by people with higher wealth. And so what I mean by that is like professional services. So like, yeah, so like getting a massage, getting your hair done, someone to do your taxes for you, like all of those. And they don't have to be taxed in North Carolina. So it's another way that we like look to people that have less to pay into the system and let people that have more, get by. And so there are just like so many things. I don't love talking about raising taxes because that's like, everyone is like, please don't raise my taxes anymore than they already are. Like, and I get that. And so like, I want to
you do it smartly and you raise the right kinds of taxes.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the key. It's the whole no taxation without representation. Okay. You can't keep raising tariffs and all these BS taxes to get more money out of the people while claiming, no, this will make us richer. No, it'll make you richer and us poorer. Now, if you were to raise the right taxes, like this tax, and we're going to raise it X amount. And so you're going to see a little bit of an impact at the end of the year, but not a huge impact because we're only raising it 1% each year for the next 5 years. So it goes up to that 5% we need it to be at. So it's like, oh, well, each year you're just going to take a little bit more until we get to that point. Okay, well, that's not too bad then. I mean, again, there are ways to work with the system, and as long as we raise the correct taxes and lower the correct taxes, and that's key, is raise the correct ones and lower the correct ones, then you can find that perfect balance where, okay, well, I'm not actually having as much taken out of every check, but all the taxes are actually going to fund the things they need to fund instead of everything else they don't need to fund.
Well, also when they fund all of those things, you have less expenses, right? And so like if we would actually fund healthcare, then we wouldn't have people that go bankrupt because of an accident, and so I do think, I want to be very sensitive to that. A lot of people are not doing well right now. And so like it's hard to talk about finances with people because a lot of people are not doing well. But like my promise is I am not trying to like fix North Carolina on working class backs. That is not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to fix North Carolina on corporate and wealthy folks' backs that have benefited from this system and should pay back into it. So working class people can finally take a deep breath and like not be living paycheck to paycheck and have their needs met, have a higher living wage, but also just have less expenses, because when you have less expenses or things are more affordable, then that wage goes a lot further. And so that is my promise. And that is really truly my platform of what I'm trying to do in a nutshell.
Yeah. And then you'll hear, oh, well, if you do that, then the wealthy are going to leave. Okay. So 1% of the wealthy will leave. The other 99% will stay. Cool. Yeah. Because the other 99%, it doesn't really affect them. And they're not even going to notice that the taxes went up until maybe 5 years later. They're like, oh, I was paying 2% more in taxes. Nah, I didn't notice. Yeah. Of course they didn't, because they make more in 1 year than they can spend in 10. So it's definitely that, yes, we need to turn back and look back to when the last time we had high taxes on the wealthy. Guess what? They didn't leave the country. They didn't leave the states. They just paid their taxes because they didn't really care because, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. I'm still making more money than I can spend in a lifetime. Cool. The rest of us can finally, breathe. It's
also really expensive to like uproot your life. People just think someone's going to like uproot their life and go somewhere else over 2% taxes that they won't. It's just not going to happen. It's a lie. Like, I hate even talking about it because it's a lie. It's a lie they told you. So that way we could do like trickle down economics. Yeah. We've been doing it since Reagan. It doesn't work. It's a lie.
Like, guys, after 50 years, if it's not getting better, it's not going to get better. Okay. It doesn't work. We need to change it back to taxing the wealthy. And I know somebody was saying earlier, eat the wealthy. And I know I had seen a video from the CEO of Goldman Sachs, literally sitting there talking about how they need to tax the wealth, and he would gladly pay his share too. Like, he goes, increase it 5%, increase it. He goes, make it 95% taxes over $1 billion. He goes, I don't care. He goes, but we need to tax the wealthy before the poor raise up and eat the rich. He goes, because that's what's going to happen is one day you're going to push them too far. And the CEO of United Healthcare, that's just the start. And it's like, yeah, you're speaking truth. Maybe some of your other billionaire buddies will actually listen to you because guess what? Like it or not, you push them too far. It's not going to be me, but somebody's going to step up and do it. Why? Because they ain't got nothing left to lose because everybody that I love is dead from cancer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, there's actually a group called Patriotic Millionaires. I was looking at their websites, patrioticmillionaires.org, and they're a whole group of millionaires across the country who like are they like endorse candidates that want to have a living wage, that want to tax the rich. And their like tagline is millionaires who want a rich, stable, free country demand an economy that ensures it. Because they know that it's not good for business to not have childcare. They know that it's not good for business for people to not have paid leave, like it's not good for business for people to not be able to get sick and so they get burnout. Like none of those things are good for business. And so, yeah. And so like, I don't worry when people say, oh, they're all going to leave. It's not going to happen. In fact, like if North Carolina had great public schools and had free pre-K4, which is another one of my priorities, and had accessible and affordable childcare and had all these things, that would be great for businesses. And the businesses would want to be here because they'd have employees that want to work at their companies.
Yep.
So
employees who have more money at the end of the day because daycare is affordable, and so they're not as burnt out because they don't have to pick up that extra shift to make sure that the ends meet because they had to put the kid in daycare. Yeah, I've been there if you can't tell. It's one of those like it just the cortisol level that drops in a woman's brain when she does not have to worry about all that stuff and how to make ends meet and she can just enjoy her life and enjoy her job and enjoy being a mom. Good Lord, we just need more of that because that's how it should be. We shouldn't be pulling out our hair and trying to figure out, okay, well, our husband works, but we got to do this and this and this and this and this and still have a job on top of it. Yeah, been there, done that. It's not fun. Let's see real quick. Bernie has some good ideas. Bernie does have some good ideas. And take care, Cindy. Have a good night. You got a 40-cent raise this year? Yeah, inflation really does suck. Hi, Baruti. Welcome in, guys. Okay, so back to data centers. So some of the things that I looked into for your state is you currently have 92 different data centers in operation. The only states that are higher than you are Virginia, Texas, and California. Yep. No, I did the research. And I'm like, oh, okay, because, Virginia, their data center alley, where they have like 70 data centers in one area. And I was looking at in Carolina, there was one area where there's like, there are 32 or 36 data centers in one area. I'm like going, that's a lot. I know what data centers do to that land, and they're building more, and they're talking about putting in hyperscale ones there. I'm like, do they even understand how bad hyperscale ones are? Like, I understand in Indiana, they're putting them in all over the place, 30 to 40 of them in current production in Indiana. God, I'm going to have a headache all the time, quite literally, because of the building.
They don't care. Like, I don't know if they understand. I know they don't care.
Yeah, they don't care. And that's just it. Yeah. When it comes down to it, a lot of it is the corporations, the people who are putting all these policies in place, the people who are pushing for all this, they don't care because it doesn't affect them. Well, one day it will, or it's going to affect their kids or their grandkids. But until then, they're not going to care. And then, oh, well, now that it's affecting me, why is it affecting me? It shouldn't affect me. Now I care. It's like, well, you should have cared 30 years ago. It's too late now. Congratulations. Yeah, we're part of it. But let's see. But also several of your counties have filed temporary moratoriums on them because they want to make sure there's more robust rules in place for the data centers. And what I was reading in, especially when it comes to their data usage and their water usage, because they are citing the same things that they're citing here where, oh, the water's clean enough that we can just put it right back in the reservoir. No, it's not. No, it's not. No, do not let them put that right back in the reservoir because they do not filter it before they put it back in. So all those coolants and antifreeze, because guess what? That's what they have to use. It's still in the water. Guess what? That is toxic to us people, and it's going to kill your animals if they ingest it. Keep in mind is antifreeze, and this is something that I don't think everybody understands. If your dog licks antifreeze, they will die. If your cat licks antifreeze, they will die. If you ingest antifreeze, it is fatal. It is extremely toxic. You do not want it in your system. They are talking about how the water will be clean after cooling everything without having it filtered and removing all of the chemicals. It's not clean. They need to not put it back into the groundwater. They need to not put it back into the aquifers, and they need to not put it back into the reservoirs.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. And part of my district, Blues Creek, which is like outside of Walkertown, which is a big part of my district, has had a lot of coal ash pollution, like a significant amount. There's been like books written about it. They have traced it to people getting cancer and other chronic diseases and things like that. And this is like proven. The studies have been done for the correlation and all that kind of stuff. So I know you're talking about data centers. I will get there in a second. Trump and the big beautiful bill actually reversed a lot of EPA regulations. And so, yeah.
What I was going to bring up.
Yeah. And so one of those was that like a lot of these coal ash plants were supposed to be replaced with like nuclear energy. And there's also problems with nuclear energy, but like it is cleaner than the coal ash plants. Yep. And so North Carolina has this plant that has polluted the waters of Blues Creek, has polluted the people, has led to chronic disease. And now it's not being closed because Trump said it doesn't have to be. So of course Duke Energy is not going to close it. Why would they close it when they don't have to, And so now they're trying to keep that open. They're also trying to build a nuclear plant. And also there's a data center going not far from there in Stokes County, which is not part of my district, but it will affect the water that runs off into my district. And one of the things that I talk about a lot, especially in that area, because that is a very red area. It's very rural. And so a lot of rural areas are very red. And so some of my message is like, it is very common that they will repollute places they've already polluted. Like once they've already harmed you, then why not come back again? Like they've already harmed you. They've already caused chronic disease, like why not do it to you again? And so that's what we're seeing this kind of like, I call it like spatial justice. It's environmental justice, but it's based on the space that you live in, the zip code or whatever. And so I talk a lot about that. And it's actually resonated a lot with people to be like, hey, they know that they've harmed you. They know this. It's like documented. You know this. You've tried to fight cases about it. And then they're now trying to do it again. Or they're trying to put things in there that aren't properly tested and that we don't really understand. And like we don't want to find out 20 years later that it polluted you again. And so like that's what I want to do. I'm not saying we can't ever have new technology. I'm not saying we can't ever have new businesses and do new things, but they need to be regulated. They need to be tested. They need to pay into the system that they're taking from. And so for me, I would just say no new data centers in North Carolina until we have a very firm understanding of what the right checks and balances should be for them, and what the like risk versus benefit is. And it needs to have more benefit than risk. And so that's my stance on data centers. We have plenty of them. And I'm okay saying that's enough for now. Like, let's get some data on what's really happening.
No, and that's just it is. I agree on all of it. And I think that should be the case in a lot of states. I know Indiana, they keep putting them more and more in, and like they have laws in place where the citizens are liable for their energy usage and their water and then this and that. So we pay for it. The data centers don't. They don't pay a cent for the data they use or the energy they use. They don't pay anything for the water. Our bills go up instead. And it's like, it's not even that they don't pay sales tax. No, they don't pay anything, period, for X amount of years.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Like the first 5 years, lots of times. Yep.
It is the first 5 years. And it's one of those like, WTF. No, like none of us agreed on this, but that is just it, is we were gerrymandered into having a heavy Republic House and Senate, which was going to be flipped this year. Trust me when I say that, because our state went blue for Harris. But if you do your research, there is an interview from Elon Musk back in September of 25 admitting that he tampered with boxes and they need to go check any county that has 50 or less votes for Harris, because those are the ones tampered with. Okay. Independent verifiers finished verifying Indiana. All but 3 counties went blue. So, but Indiana was called an hour and a half before the voting polls closed. Just throwing that one out there in 24.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, like, that is some of the things where at the end of the day, it's going to show in 2030, and you'll see this. There will be a documentary in 2030 documenting how the election was actually rigged and stolen from Harris in 2024. And that is part of the reason why we have this steep decline and what led into everything, because it's also going to be a World War III documentary. Just trust me on that one. Don't put money down on that. Let's see. He goes, let's see. They want to put one of the data centers in my home city. They usually put additives into antifreeze to make it taste bad. They want to slam the data center. It went through without voting. You live in Indiana? Oh, that's awesome, Rick. I did not know that. But yeah, so
I lived in Indianapolis for a while, so
yeah, I live about an hour north of Indianapolis.
yeah.
That all ties into the EPA. Okay, so they rolled back with the big beautiful bill, and we all know this, and it was really bad. And then a few weeks ago, at the end of February, beginning of March, they actually passed a bill on the federal level stating that on the state level, their EPA standards cannot be more strict or stringent than what the federal government has in place. So if the federal government doesn't care about a particulate, the state is then to not care about the particulate. However, if businesses volunteer to do more than what they have to, they're welcome to. But carbon emissions, carbon dioxide emissions, like basically they don't care anymore. They don't. Like there's so many things that they don't care, because Indiana, and this goes hand in hand with, I know your Duke Energy, coal, natural gas. They're pushing to keep all of the coal plants open in Indiana for a few more years, despite the fact that most of them are 30 plus years old and should have already been shut down. And they've been getting extensions for the last 5 years. And they're trying to build more natural gas plants, which, believe it or not, is not great for the health of the people in Indiana because of the amount of pollutants that are created by those kinds of plants, where a lot of those particulates are the particulates they don't have to care about anymore. That's a problem.
Yep.
And then let's talk about water usage, because data centers are heavy water usage. So for megawatts. So for megawatt centers, that is like 300, 400 megawatts plus. So those are called hyperscale. Those can use anywhere between 1 to 5 million gallons of water a day. Not a year, a day. A day. That's as much as 10 to 50,000 people in a day. Yeah. Yeah. And they're trying to put more and more of those into all states. But flip side of that is putting more data center in is actually going to increase.
You have.
Oh, somebody reported me. Oh, well. Is actually going to increase the heat in those states as well.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
And that's the other part is Arizona. You know, I was talking to somebody in Arizona. Well, they're looking at 140 plus degrees this summer, and the data centers are adding to that. And with they've removed all the data centers, it said that it would only get to about 130. There's a 10-degree difference in the desert. You know, in other states, they're seeing a 10 to 15-degree difference because of the amount of data centers. The heat pollution. The heat pollution is something that people don't even realize is a thing, where the heat from these centers, the more blacktop we put in, the less grass and trees that we have to absorb the heat, the more that reflects back into this the atmosphere. All that does is that increases the heat of our planet, increases the heat of our states, and then makes it unsustainable for the water levels to stay. Because when your heat increases 20 degrees, the water levels are not going to be able to compensate for that, because all of it's going to just get evaporated. So now, next thing you know, you have less water for the citizenry, and you don't have the water for the data centers, because the data centers are producing the heat. They're making it so the water evaporates. Anybody else see the vicious cycle there, or is it just me? Yes, I am doing my thing, Oregon. Lithium cobalt mining. Instead of coal and natural gas, battery operated is bad also. Well, here's the thing. Nuclear, solar, biothermal, renewable. There's so many different options other than the fossil fuels that we've always used. And that's one of the things that we have to understand as people is corporations, the ones that have been around forever, big oil, coal, those gas, those industries, they don't want to go away. They don't want us using nuclear and biothermal and renewable. Why? Because that's how they lose money. A lot of the renewable ones actually generate money, believe it or not. They generate money for the citizenry. Surprise, a lot of people who have solar actually get paid for the excess energy that they're generating, not consuming, generating. Surprise. There are citizens where they actually, instead of paying the electric company, they get money from the electric company every month because they produce more than they're using, and then they give the rest of it to the electric company to help to what is it, power the energy grid for everybody. Yeah, that's a thing too. So there are so many different options other than the fossil fuels and what we've always used. I know in California, biothermal is a huge one. Indiana, Missouri, that area, we are just north of a tectonic plate, 150 miles north of of a tectonic plate in Indianapolis. Why are we not using that tectonic plate for its biothermal, heating ability? Why don't we use that for generating electricity? Why don't we use that for generating heat? There's a lot of things that can be done outside of what we've always done if we actually take the time and to use the technology to do it. But coal and oil, nowhere near the same amount. Like I said, wind turbines, they don't create they don't create anything except energy. Solar, again, it doesn't create anything for but energy. Biothermal, again, doesn't create anything but heat and energy. I mean, those are the things where there is no downside to utilizing them. That there isn't. As long as you build the proper facilities and you build them right, there is no downside. They don't create the particulates. They don't create the biochemical, waste that nuclear does. They don't create this. They don't create that. Instead, they're genuinely green, renewable sources, and that's why they're green. It's because they don't generate the carbon. They don't generate the particulates. They don't generate everything that causes harm to the environment around them. Okay, well, that's different. They can, if they are put into a migratory path, they can affect the birds. However, that's where you look for crosswind paths, because the birds tend to no longer use crosswinds simply because the crosswinds are no longer going the directions they're supposed to. It makes migrating much different. It makes it significantly more difficult than it used to. There used to be birds who they would swoop down and then they would go through like Kansas and then they would go down. But now Kansas, all of its wind goes up. None of it goes down anymore. So when they try to migrate south, they actually start to migrate north. So they don't use that crosswind anymore. I may have learned something about that in high school.
I was gonna say that's actually very interesting.
Yeah, so like I'm gonna stop there and preface like I listened to my science teachers in 7th, 8th, 9th grade. That was in the 90s. And they were very smart and they predicted a lot of things that are happening these days, such as the crosswinds. They even told me, like, you'll notice, like, watch the geese. And I watch the geese and they don't come through certain areas of our state anymore. They go through other areas because the crosswinds now come through this section. So they can't go that section because none of our crosswinds go down. They all go up because we're getting a crosswind that comes up this way, a crosswind that comes up this way, and then one crosswind that comes down and then swoops back up. Yeah. It's very interesting living in that crosswind section. So we get a lot of migratory birds that actually no longer follow their old patterns and created new ones. So that's again where if they follow the path of the crosswinds and put the wind turbines in the areas where there's generally just wind to begin with, and it's constantly flowing, then you have less issues with the migratory birds actually running into them during their migratory seasons. So you have a lot of people that are naysayers about renewable energy simply because of the amount of misinformation that's been put out there by coal and gas and oil. Yep. No, I started learning about green energy back in the 90s. And when they started talking about this and this, solar and wind turbines and how that was the step of the future, and like they were proving it, and it really is. And now we have a lot of people in legislature that are saying, oh, no, we got to stick with what we know. We got to take resources from the earth. When in reality, we could just leave those resources alone or significantly reduce the amount that we need overall in our country and actually start correcting a lot of the carbon emissions and issues that we're seeing come back up. That stopped being such a problem in 2020 because everybody stopped driving everywhere.
Yep. And also, like, all those things are really bad for the birds too. Like we're destroying their habitats and things like that. So like I'm actually with you, Mike. Like there probably are problems with all the different things, because the truth is that like the earth was not meant to like sustain this many people like at this level of like modernization that we're at, like, and so like we're probably not going to get to a point where people just like go back to all living off the grid without electricity and things like that. So we do have to like find things that are iteratively better. Like I mean that's the truth. And also the hope is that we then as an intelligent species will find like new solutions in the future. But right now we're not in a place where we're going to have time to do that unless we slow things down dramatically. And so I do think there are problems with all of them. There probably are. There's, like, because we're building these giant structures that takes resources to build these structures and things like that. But I think that people overemphasize the problems with renewable energy and then don't like. It's like, okay, but all that is also happening with the other types, like the dirty energy. But then it's that and a lot more.
Yeah, and I hear a lot of, well, the renewable energy, it's ugly. And if you think coal plants aren't ugly, they're ugly. Like, somebody was explaining the story about how she had a friend, and her friend, when they were younger, thought that those plants were the cloud making factories because of the fact that those clouds coming up were the pollution they were expunging into the air. And it's like, in Indiana, we have that issue where it's the air. Like in the morning, I was flying out of Indianapolis, and it wasn't until we started taking off that I realized that, oh, the sun had come up. It was just so smoggy and it was so brown outside that until we started to lift through the first layer of clouds, I didn't realize, but it was all the way up until we got out to a certain point, and then it started to turn white. I'm like, oh my God, that's gross. And that's only been in the last year, because it did not, a year ago when I flew, it was not like that. Oh God, it was not. It's never been like that. And now they're talking about, oh yeah, well, if you're near the airport and it's this time, you want to wear a mask because otherwise you're breathing in all that pollution. And I'm
That's
like,
crazy.
that is just disgusting. It's never been like that before. But unfortunately, that is what we're going to start seeing in more metropolitan areas, is the amount of pollution and just smog showing up, because of the fact that people have to understand, yeah, maybe the coal factory is 50 miles away, but that doesn't mean the wind's not going to blow all of that towards your city. And then it's going to settle because now you have all these tall buildings and the wind doesn't flow freely. So everything just kind of sits. That's what happened in LA. It's why China, even though they've tried so hard and they've actually improved their air quality significantly over the last 3 decades, because they've taken to heart the whole, if we don't do something, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse, and people are getting more cancer more and more and more. So what did they do? They actually made a concentrated effort to clean up their environment, and the amount of cancers, especially lung cancer, that they've had in the last decade has dropped almost 90%. They went from having like 10,000 cases a year, and I'm not, that's undermarking it, to maybe 200-300, like significant drop. And it's like, okay, but they're proving like, yes, okay, so yeah, if we clean it up and we make the environment good for the people living in it, they're less likely to get sick. You think? Yeah, that's just what they've been screaming since, the 80s. But we're just now.
Al Gore had his election stolen too, and then a lot of things have happened since then.
Yeah. Side note, what the heck are airplane trails? Well, what do you think they are? They're moisture and pollutants from the diesel. That's what airplane trails are. Is those same cloud trails? It's the same as when you have the clouds being made from the factories. Is they are all the pollutants that are generated from the engines. Great example is if you ever drive behind a car and it starts pushing out smoke, especially black smoke, you probably should tell that car owner they need to go get the oil changed, because that is a sign that they are almost out of oil and they are running on extremely dirty oil. But even then, if you are in the summer and you see a car having white smoke come out of it, that's not a good sign, because cars should not actually have smoke coming out of the back of them. So if you do see that, that's an issue. So with airplanes, it's very similar, where you're not going to always see it from all airplanes, but you're going to see it from a lot of them. And it's a moisture trail that is also has all the contaminants and pollutants from them going through the sky and hitting a certain hitting a certain altitude. Okay, I paid attention in science class. But no, I love the fact that we can talk about this. But let's talk about housing, because I know housing and affordability and the housing crisis that you have in your state. Temperature difference between engine temp and air temp. Thank you. That's part of it. That's part of the moisture. Where I was looking, so the median household the median house in North Carolina, listing price is usually 520,000, but the buying price is roughly 330K, but in Raleigh about 450K. So that kind of shows the disparity of the housing market in multiple different parts of the state, because listing
Mhm.
price is usually 500,000. Buying price in most of the state is 330K, but in Raleigh it's 450. So that just kind of shows Raleigh versus other parts of the state and just the disparity in the housing market. And then since 2020, home values have risen 23% in North Carolina. So since 2020, again, record profits, record highs, record everything. Everything just keeps getting more and more and more expensive. But we're being told, no, 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 it's going to get cheaper. It's going to get cheaper. Well, when is it supposed to get cheaper? Because it's not. It just keeps going up. And then I do know that the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency is trying to, well, they were talking about how North Carolina is going to have a shortfall over the next 5 years of roughly 764,000 units.
Yeah.
Yep. And then about 30% of the households are considered cost burden. And that is when a household has to spend over 30% of their income on housing.
Yep.
And some of those are just explanations for people so they know what that term means. So yeah, I know Indiana has a similar issue. Since 2020, housing prices here have increased 42%. So we feel that. We feel it. Hell, not in Wilmington. So that is it. I'm retired. Smog has nothing to do with it. Well, no, but particulates do, because when you are doing that, the vapor clouds, they do still have particulates in them.
Yeah. There's soot in them and things like that, just like exhaust from a car.
Mhm. But I was kind of comparing it, not necessarily saying smog. Smog is what settles in the cities,
Mhm.
but the particulates, the clouds, the things that we see coming out of the factories, that is in truth what creates the smog that is settling in the cities. Because even though, okay, that is not hitting my city because I'm west of it and the wind blows east, that's going to hit all the cities east of it for 50 miles. So all of that pollution is going to hit those cities. And if those cities have a lot of factories or a lot of things that keep hitting them with that pollution, it's going to create smog in that city, especially early in the morning when the clouds settle before they, go back up. Yeah, part of it is temp difference. I agree. I'm not discounting that. That is in part what lets you see, especially in the morning, the fog, the smog, is because the temp difference. It makes it more noticeable, but it's not, I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm saying that that's part of it. But yeah, let's the housing crisis. So let's talk about that.
So, there are, just in Forsyth County, which is where I am, there are, I have to remember the most recent stats. I actually, like I said, I work with the unhoused population, but the stats change pretty frequently. But I think the most recent numbers are like 700 and some fully like unsheltered individuals. So this means they're not in shelters or any other, like living with a friend or something like that, but they're like fully unsheltered, living on the street or in tent camps or things like that. And then there's, a significant amount more that are what we would consider unhoused. So they might be living in a shelter, or they're living with a friend, or have temporary housing or something like that. And so, I mean, it's a huge problem in Forsyth County, but I also it's really important for me because I am a homeowner, and I think it can be really easy as a homeowner to think that that's the only problem we need to solve for is like affordable housing units. Everyone gets a home. There are renters. And so like a big part a thing that I want to do, because I haven't rented in a very long time, is like understand more about renting and renters' rights and the vouchers that we use. Because like we used to just build public housing. That's what we did. We would build public housing. People that needed more affordable housing would go live in this public housing. We don't do that anymore. We have vouchers. Like everything is a voucher nowadays. And the vouchers don't work. So first of all, not a landlord doesn't have to take them. So like you're not, just by having vouchers and someone getting a voucher does not mean that then is synonymous with them getting an apartment or a home or something like that. But they're also very difficult to use. So there's like an adoption issue with them because they're difficult to understand how to apply for, get, use, all the terms and things like that. but then also we need people on the other side that will actually accept them. And then also, like, they could accept them one year and then turn around and not accept them the next, and then you're having to figure out, you're having to move and leave. Or they could sell their unit. I mean, it's very common that people will come in, they'll build affordable housing units and say they're going to accept vouchers, and then the economy changes, this unit isn't making the money, they sell it to private equity. Private equity comes in. Well, they don't have to keep giving that voucher, like using that voucher. They can change all the policies. And so there's a lot that I want to do with just like renters' rights. There's a lot I want to do with housing and like affordable homes and things like that. But there are people that are currently renting today that I want to have more rights. Some of those things are, you know, caps on rent. We always talk about the rent is too damn high. So like caps on rent. You know, like more requirements for when people come in and want to build units that they like have to have like accept vouchers for a certain amount of time. Again, it's like we give a lot of deals to businesses, but we don't necessarily like force them to give back to us. And so like I want there to be more like mutually beneficial arrangements when we're letting people come in, especially private equity, come in and build units. I also think we should limit that in general. Like I think homes should be for people and not profit. And so limit how many people are coming in and like building these very expensive apartments and homes that are jacking up prices and making it unaffordable. Other things that you can do, community land trusts. I really love the idea of community land trusts. It can be a hard sell because the thing is that in America, we are very individualistic, you know, and like we have this idea that everyone should have an acre of land. Now it's more like a quarter of an acre of land, but you know, everyone should have their little plot of land. They should have their single family home with 4 bedrooms and 2 baths. And like, there's just this, we don't live in community like we used to. And so it can be a very hard sell, not to like the corporations, but to us as individuals. Yeah. Sometimes to do what is necessary to create more affordable living. Some of those things are building less single family homes. So more duplexes, more multifamily units and things like that, you know, getting rid of zoning that doesn't allow for that. So there can be more mixed use communities where there's like, you know, apartments and duplexes and townhomes and like a lot of different things in a small space. Community land trusts actually give the land to the community. So there can be like land, and instead of you selling it off to private equity, the community owns it. They can build what they want to on there. And so they can say, okay, we want to build 50 tiny homes, and then people can buy them and they can sell them. So it's the same as like owning a home, but you don't own the land. And so the price is less because you're only owning and paying for the tiny home, and then the community ultimately owns the land. And so they can change based on like what the needs are. So if like people move out, they might change and say, okay, we need something else here now to like serve the community, but you're still getting to keep your equity from what you paid and what you sell and stuff like that. So there's like community land trust, something to look up. It's not commonly used, but it actually is very effective in keeping housing prices down. Like I said, renter protections, one of those is that if someone does sell their building, that the tenants have the first right to buy them out, you know, and at an affordable price. So you can like cap how much the tenants would have to pay, you know, so they're not having to pay some like crazy inflation on the building, but you know, you can cap the profit and let the tenants have first rights, because truthfully, like homes should be for people and not profits. And so if someone is losing their home so someone else can make a significant amount of money, we're doing something wrong, like as a society. And so that for me are the things I want to do. A lot of them are just policy driven. They're just policy driven, changing zoning rules and things like that to allow for more types of housing structure. One interesting fact in Forsyth County is that where we are actually the most, which is crazy to me. I feel crazy even saying it, but where we are the most like deficient in housing is actually for the richest people. So the richest people don't have these giant homes that they can afford to live in here. And so they're living in homes that are like below their means. Well, then that's decreasing inventory for the next group. And it kind of like continues down. Wild that is the situation we're in, but that is true. I mean, that changes inventory.
In 1 or 2 multi-million-dollar, you know, communities in your area in order to, you know, help with that issue.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds really weird, but I'm not surprised, because as much as we have lack of funding and housing for the people on one end of the spectrum, of course, we're going to actually have it on the other end of the spectrum. We just may not realize it because it's not as big of an issue as it is for the people on the lower end of the spectrum.
Yeah. But truthfully, I really believe we should go back to more public housing. I mean, if you look at the stats of how much homelessness or being unhoused costs society, the healthcare costs, the cost to police or, all those types of things, the crises costs when you're having to pay for like crisis and things like that, it is actually incredibly cheaper just to give someone a home. Like it really, truly is.
It really is.
And so I am a person that you were talking about SNAP benefits earlier. And I am just like a person that is more in belief if a person needs fed, feed them, like if a person needs a house, give them a house, and like, obviously we want accountability with that. We want to make sure programs are working and we want to give them peer support. So that way they can maintain being in the home or they can, we want all those things too, but none of those things can happen while a person is like hungry living on a street. Like we can't, so we need to fix that problem first. And so I don't believe in all these like litmus tests for like people getting things that they need. That's what I actually believe government is supposed to do. Like government is supposed to serve the people, and we've gotten away from that. And so that's what I want to do. And then I really truly believe on the other side, we're actually going to see like things are way less expensive when we just like give people their basic human needs. We also don't give litmus tests to like corporations to give them like corporate welfare. So I don't think we should give them to people, truthfully.
Right. Okay. And Rick is saying a true millionaire only lives on a third of their income. Most millionaires are upside down in debt. You're not wrong. A lot of them, they are, what is it? Asset rich, money poor? Mm-hmm. Or cash poor, then that's just it. Is you're not wrong. They're asset rich. They look like they have a lot of money, but if they were to actually go to their bank account, they don't really have a lot of cash in there. And that's because everything is tied up in stocks. It's tied up in assets. It's tied up in this. And they'd actually have to sit there and liquidate everything and hope they make a profit. Because a lot of those, Elon Musk is a perfect example. He lives off the interest for all of his investments. A lot of the millionaires, they live off the interest for their investments, not the actual money that they've earned. Instead, the money they've earned is what they sink into their investments. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I wish I could do that. Instead, I have to live paycheck to paycheck because you know what? That's the American dream, right? So if you could and make any one thing law in North Carolina, what would it be?
I'm so sorry. I coughed when you started that question. Can you repeat it?
If you could snap your fingers and make any one thing law in North Carolina, what would it be?
Oh, I mean, it would be the corporate tax rate. Just because, I mean, we can't, I tell people this all the time. Like, I actually think it's the most boring thing in the world that my platform is mostly about taxes. But like, we cannot do anything unless we have the revenue to do it. And North Carolina state revenue is terrible compared to other states of like similar size and wealth and things like that. Also, we give way less money to our municipalities and like local towns and cities than other states do. And so that is why our property taxes are so high in North Carolina, because cities and municipalities are required by federal law to supply certain things like wastewater treatment, landfills, road maintenance, like schools. They pay for like the buildings and things like that. The county does. And so like they have to pay for those things and they're not making a profit. They will stay budget neutral, but if they're not getting money from the federal government, from the state government for these things, then they have to raise your property taxes. And so like a lot of what I talk about is taxes because I don't think people understand like why their property taxes are so high, or like how like just paying 1% more in income tax could actually save you so much money on the other end in this like tax or what, or like whatever. And so I would snap my fingers and raise the corporate tax rate here.
Hey, I love it. But that's one of the reasons why I like to ask that question. And Ethan was the one who actually, he came in and he asked of one of the people I was interviewing. I'm like, oh, that's a good question. I'm asking of everybody going forward because, that's one of those that a lot of times people are like, oh, that's a good one. Oh, let me think about that. Now, if you can snap your fingers and make one thing law in America, what would it be?
I would get rid of Citizens United. So like the whole idea that we can, um, that we can have corporate PACs like fund our lobby our government and can like buy our politicians and things like that. I will be the first to say that I think voting is a tool for change. Like I really think a lot of change
Oh, it
comes
is.
from like community work and like being in your community and things like that. Voting is a tool, but it is a constitutional right of a tool that we have. And so we talk about the Constitution, how important it is, and people talk about like the Second Amendment and, the Constitution is the law of the land and we have to uphold it no matter what. Well, voting is one of those rights. And so we should not be able to buy our representatives and buy out our government. And so I would get rid of that because that would make a huge difference immediately.
Oh yeah, no.
Pictures were waving and about.
I love that. I love that. I was going to say something and then I forgot my train of thought. Oh God, what was it going to say? It had to do with that. Give us Citizens United. No, the whole getting the big money out of politics is key. It really is. Getting rid of Citizens United, making it so those certain PACs can't lobby our representatives. Having APAC no longer be involved. Have J Street, which is another recent pro-Israel group that's coming through in Utah and Arizona and trying to buy up more of their representatives. There's a lot of things like that where we talk about, the DNC, the RNC, the big donors, this corporation, that corporation, where, if politicians had to wear, jackets like NASCAR drivers, it would be very, very damning because a lot of them, oh, that's who you're backed by. Oh, well, that's not a good thing. God, what was it I was going to ask?
Another thing said I'm a comic, and then another one said I'm your.
I know. What was it? Oh, it had to be the community. Okay, it's community. Okay. So something I do occasionally talk about is the fact that back in the 1920s is when we started to move away from community living, and they started to actually push the nuclear family, which is single family household on a small plot of land, an acre, half an acre, a fourth of an acre, whatever the size it is, your kids, that's it. You don't have grandma, you don't have aunts and uncles, you don't have nieces, and you just have nobody but yourself to help with raising your family. And that was pushed even harder in the 1940s, and then in the 1960s and 70s and 80s and 90s until we are where we are today, where they have separated us from our community so much that most people don't live within a 30-minute driving distance of any blood relative, let alone an hour driving distance. That most people's communities are actually hours away from where they reside, because that is what's been done. Is we created community when we were children, and then as we became adults we moved away from our community to start our nuclear family, to be that independent individual, which is fantastic, we all should be, but at the same time we've lost something in doing that. We've lost the generational care. My grandmother helped to raise me. My mom was supposed to help raise my kids. This one didn't happen. Yeah, it's a curse of being a millennial because, okay, love you, Mom, but I get it. You raised your kids. You'll occasionally take your grandkids like once a month for a few hours. Thank you. I appreciate that because, hey, I get an extra nap, or Dan and I get a date night. That's fantastic. But yeah, it was one of those, I saw my grandma multiple times a week. My kids are lucky if they see her once a month. So, I mean, that's where that's cool. That's fine. That's great. She's living her own life. I try not to bother her with it because you know what? I don't want her to get angry and resentful of me for trying to force my kids on her that she said she wanted, because she was so excited for their kids.
Because you were talking earlier about therapy for men, and I think this is one of the things that, like, I don't think that white people sometimes understand how much more this thing that you're talking about affects them. Because a lot of people of color still live in community, and they actually, when shit hits the fan, are gonna be fine because they have community. They have people to go to if they need food, or they know how to organize. They take care of each other. They, and things like that. We white people don't live in community anymore. And when shit hits the fan and it's just you and your like nuclear family, and you don't know any of your neighbors, you've never spoken to them, and and things like that, like that, it's going to affect us the most. And I think it's like the same with the patriarchy and men. Like we talk about all the effects that some of this has had for women and for people of color, but like the patriarchy has been detrimental to men. Like it doesn't allow them to have emotions. It doesn't allow them to not have to be strong and be the provider. It didn't teach them any social skills, you know? And so now women are outpacing them in college degrees, and Black women the most. They're outpacing them. Yeah, they're outpacing them in jobs. They're outpacing them in all kinds of things, except we also have the skills of managing a family and like the social skills and things like that, where men don't have that. And so now they're feeling left behind, and they are. Like, that's not untrue. They are, because the patriarchy didn't teach them how to cook and clean and take care of a family and do childcare and all that kind of stuff. And
regulate.
yeah, and we learned how to do the part that society didn't teach us because we fought for it. And so like none of these systems are good for anybody. Like I think there are certain people that feel the effects more because they are marginalized and things like that, but like they're not good for us either. And I think all the time about community and how like, I mean, I tell my like white friends, you better like go meet your neighbors. Like what the hell are you going to do when like World War III hits? Who are you going to call?
I'm talking to my friends going, okay, I know we're all across the different states, but you're in charge of getting the money together for the compound that we're all going to live on. You do stock trading. You said you're trading oil right now, so you should make some money, right?
Yeah.
Like stuff. I'm like, I'm putting you in charge of getting the money together for the compound. Why? Because I'm at the point where like all my friends, you want to come live within like a 5-minute walking distance of me? We'll just buy some land and put some houses on it, have community gardens, and just give me my greenhouses, my sunroom, and I'll be happy. Give me my cat. I'll be fine.
I'll take care of your kids. You take care of my kids. Yeah.
But that's just it as well. But I've talked to them. I'm like, you know, we all have these different skills and different abilities and different capabilities that we really could rely on each other. Like we could barter. I have a green thumb and I can massage people. I can also cook. You want to come clean my house for me for massage? Done. I don't want to have to scrub my toilets ever again. If you're willing to scrub my house for me, I'll work on you. But that's just it. Is okay. There's some people who are, one of my best friends loves cleaning. Loves cleaning. Cool. That's what we did for a while. She came and cleaned my house. I worked on her. Why? Because I can massage you. I don't want to clean toilets and wash windows. She's like, oh, I love doing that shit. I'm like, would you come clean my house? I'll give you a massage. But that's just it. Is we should go back to bartering more of our skills. And that's just another thing we've gotten away from is skill bartering. Everything has to be tied to cold, hard cash. Well, what happens when nobody has any cash left because we're in World War III and the electrical grid's not working? How are you going to manage? What skills do you have? Can you make anything with your hands? Can you be productive? Or are you going to be sitting there going, well, the only skill I had was I could type on a keyboard. It's like, well, you're going to have to learn.
You can answer emails very quickly.
No.
Yeah.
But that's just it. Is no, I love this. I love all of this. But we need to get back to the community living. The community land trust. I like the way that you talked about that. And I've seen that. There are some areas where that has been in place where they had like, it was 20 acres and they had like 10 tiny homes on it. And the homes were all in this, you know, in similar area where there was some trees between all of them, but the rest of it was like they worked together there was a farm area, there was a greenhouse, there was bees, there was this, there was that, but they had people who had all these different skills that worked together and taught each other. So that way more than just one person knew how to tend the bees. You had 5 people after a year who could take care of the bees. You had 15 people who could tend the crops. You had 20 people who could work in the greenhouse. So they helped to teach each other the skills that they didn't have to begin with. And again, this was back in the 90s in Washington, but they started showing that things like that, community living, that's really the way we should be going back to. We should know our neighbors. Cities should have community plots. We should have more community spaces. Instead, we don't have the funds for them, so they're shutting them down one after the other because, well, it's not as important as this, and this. Yeah, maybe we need to get the funds to make it all happen instead of saying these 3 things are priorities, so we have to let these other 10 things go to the side. Well, why don't we make 10 things their priority and we'll work on the other 3.
Jenna, where did you go?
Work on, not put them to the side, but work on them. And I loved earlier when you mentioned that you're the type of person where if you can't dedicate the time to making sure it happens, you'll get it on the plate of the person who can. I love it. Because that means you're willing to use your resources. And even if you are not the best possible person for it, you will get them to the best possible person for it. And that's key. That is communication. That is growth. That is showing that you actually care about each and every person and their ideas, even if it's not something that you can take care of yourself. I love that. We need
Yeah.
more. We do. We need more people who are willing to work with each other, more people who are willing to be expressive about it. This is where I stand on these points. Work with me or don't. Like, let's get this done instead of, well, I'm going to be quiet in the corner and hope somebody else actually raises their hand and says, yeah, I'm in this too. So I have somebody I can talk to afterwards instead. No, anybody else here for healthcare for all, raise your hand. Who wants to have conversation? Like, that's the kind of person I am. And I truly feel like you're that same kind of person where you have no problem standing up and being like, fine, nobody else is going to be vocal. Hi, my name is so-and-so. I'm here for this, this, and this. Who else is with me?
Yeah, I mean, I did that. I'm working on that with immigration things and Forsyth County because, I hear businesses, I hear churches, I hear all these people say, like, we don't want ICE coming and like ripping our neighbors off the street. And I'm like, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? Like, what are you planning to do about it? And, everyone's like, I don't know. Like, like I'll take ICE watch training and I'll, stand by or whatever. I'm like, no, let's like do something about it. So I created a framework where it has like roles for all these different people to play in the community. So like, what can businesses do? What can a school do? What can a church do? What can city council do? What can county commissioners do? What can state reps do? So like some of it's policy, some of it is principle. And then like if all of us are signing on, if we have 100 businesses and 100 churches and this and this and this, well, then we go to the sheriff and we say, okay, look, all of your community has signed on to this. We don't want you to help them.
Right.
Are you going to do that and like piss off everybody, And so like, I do think that there's like a need sometimes, like we get an analysis paralysis or we feel so helpless because like it's hard to do something as one person and it is. And so it's like, okay, well, instead of us always talking about these things, let's like make a plan and let's sign on to it and let's put public pressure behind it. Let's go to city council meetings and say, hey, here are my 50 business friends and we all agree with this policy. So are you going to sign on to your part of this plan? Or do we need to come back next month and like make your life miserable until you do, like we have to do things like that. And so like ICE was a big one for me. I have a friend who found out at 18 that he was an undocumented immigrant, does not have any memory of not living in the US, came over when he was like under 4 and found out because he wanted to join the military. And then his parents were like, well, you can't join the military because you're an undocumented immigrant. Had no idea. Whole life changed, at 18. Found out he can't vote. He can't do all these things. And if he were to like get deported or sent back, it'd be to a place that he doesn't know and he doesn't remember. Like here is his home. Here is his family. Here is his friends. He's married, like has a community. He is a contributor. He pays his taxes. He contributes. He has a business, and so it's just like for me, that was such a personal issue, but just like also so ingrained in me that like it is so, again, antithetical to Christianity and like what I grew up in and what people say they believe, that like it was a big deal for me to not stand by. I know as a state rep, you can't do a lot because a lot of this stuff is like federal in nature, but it's like, what can I do? And then what can other people do? And how do I find those people so we do it together and bring more power to this?
And then there's always that, okay, well, worst case scenario, here's the number for these federal level reps. Let's start calling them, everyone. Yeah. Let's be an annoying pain in their ass until they're like, you know what? I will vote your way if you will just shut up and have everybody stop calling me. Please.
Yep.
Like, that's how you do it. You annoy the ever-loving crap out of them until they listen and they're like, I will vote that way if you guys will just leave me alone. Please, for the love of God. Just stop ringing the phone because... And I tell people, if you really want to get something to change, you get as many people as you can to write letters, write emails, and call. Make sure that phone is ringing nonstop. They get no peace the entire time somebody is in that city office. Because if you do that, they will eventually have to listen. They will. Because if everybody's calling and that's ringing off the phone 24/7, 365 days, after X amount of days, they're going to be like, okay, we're going to just take the phone calls and find out what they're talking about. And they will. It's been proven that if people actually do that, their representatives will change their votes. But you have to have people who are willing to make those phone calls, willing to be the royal pain in the ass. Mm-hmm. We need more of us.
Well, I'm gonna have to go soon, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to ask any like final questions if you have any.
So no, actually, I'm pretty much caught up on everything I had listed for the day. So that's fantastic. What I will do though is if afterwards you will send me a message with the best email to send this video to,
The point.
and I will get that over to you once I have it downloaded, and then we will get another follow up on the books for about
Okay.
6 weeks or so out. So that way we can follow up and find out what's going on and keep learning more about you.
Cool. Sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jen. And this was Jen Wiles. She is running in North Carolina for their House of Representatives, District 75. And take care, Jen. Thanks so much. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for you coming in and hanging out and joining me while we have a conversation with Jen. I will be back tomorrow where at 7:30 p.m. That's Tuesday, April 7th? Yes. With Ethan Sweetland May, who's running in Indiana for their Senate District 47. Much love, and everybody. Take care. I'll see you tomorrow.